Like, as a joke, I had posted once on LinkedIn saying that the number of IIT IIM graduates is inversely proportional to the chances of success of a consumer startup. I think pedigree is overrated, experience is also overrated, and this we've seen. What is underrated is high agency of getting things done.
यार फर्स्ट टाइम फाउंडर्स के साथ ये प्रॉब्लम है. You are so romanticizing entrepreneurship. You're in it for the first time. You're thinking सब बहुत बढ़िया होगा. 10-20 साल 30 साल. Investor वैसा नहीं सोच रहा है ना. He's saying I put X, I want this. This is my horizon. I had to 5 years, 7 years, whatever the fund horizon is. And you are thinking 10, 20 years, your children, your grandchildren, your legacy, your purpose, your heart, your soul,
The human brain is not designed to think in terms of probability. It's designed to think this is right, that is wrong. We should do this, we should not do that. We should go here, we should not go here. So the moment you start thinking in probabilities, then you have a series of bets and therefore you play a portfolio game. So you're always a portfolio manager.
Yeah.
Because at our time, Shantanu, any fund at that time in India that had capital or venture in its name rejected us.
I think over time you can build a culture where you're able to attract, and McKinsey has done that at some level as well. Excite, retain great people. You develop a way to test out, high agency and so on.
All right, guys, I'm going to go around the table with a quick introduction of everyone. But thank you so much for making the time to come onto the Barbershop in a totally new and unexplored format for myself also and for all our viewers also. So quick introduction, I'll go from one side to the other. Arindam, and by the way, for the viewers, all these gentlemen are actually meeting each other for the first time. Maybe in a 6C2, I think maybe only Arjun and I have met multiple times on the Barbershop. Deepak and I have met in McKinsey context. Aniket and I in McKinsey context. Dad and I, of course, have a long history. But, but the rest of them have meeting each other broadly for the first time. Arindam is a founding member at Atomberg. Atomberg is one of the most exciting consumer durables companies. You would have seen their ads. They are all about fans, and I think they've got into a lot of new categories, 100 crores plus per month. And taking on challengers, taking on big behemoths in the space, something that I learned from. And Arindam is an extraordinary thought leader on LinkedIn. So he writes in detail about how to build D2C companies, how to market them, what are some of the things. And by the way, I must thank you because our entire team kind of looks up to this. You are shared around a lot on internal WhatsApp groups, etc. So very keen to hear your thoughts today. Deepak and I go back a long way. Deepak is my senior from IIM Lucknow, also my senior from McKinsey, and then left McKinsey as an associate partner and started a logistics company called Rivigo. It became huge, sold it, and now is in the recruitment space, running anywhere jobs. Again, a founder whose thoughts have kind of really been extremely leading for. I remember when I was starting up, people would talk about you saying, DJ se jaake milo before you start a company because he is the person who will guide you. So I'm hoping that today we get to hear a lot about those and your journey as well. Arjun is the CEO of Reckitt in China. Before that, headed Reckitt's entire online business globally. Set up Reckitt's businesses in South Korea, played a big role in India, but most of all is a dear friend, sits on the board of Bombay Shaving Company, used to play a very critical role in India's largest razor manufacturer. So we use a lot of those insights today. Prolific angel investor, so comes with a lot of insights into 0 to 1 journeys of a lot of companies, especially in consumer. Aniket and I again go back a long way. McKinsey, spent time in the US, ran his own company. Today is the founding member at Mensa, which is a collection of brand. I don't know, is collection the right word?
House of brands.
House of brands. House of brands. But personally, my favorite thing about Aniket is that he's a public markets eagle. Every time I talk to him about public markets, last time he told me कि Bombay Shaving Company का फटाफट IPO करो. Here are the 6 pros of doing this quickly. So I was great. Let me get my notes. But he's I
think all your investors are happy about that.
But even Deepak was sharing the same thing, that public market investors. So Nikhil Vora sits on our board as well, has been an analyst for many years. I agree. They do have, like you were saying, they have an insight into
Super
business
insight,
building that is truly distinctive. So Aniket, again, thank you and welcome. And my dad, Kiran Deshpande, he's again been on the bar. We were just calculating, this is Arjun's 7th episode of the Barbershop. Wow. So Arjun is like Barbershop veteran, but dad has been there before. Big part of building the IT industry with TCS, was CEO of TechMahindra, started his own company at the age of 50 in the US and India, sold it in 2018, and then over the last 7 years has been doing a lot of work as mentor to startups, especially in Pune, in the software space, angel investor, sits on the board of TIE, IIT Bombay, etc., etc. So, and also is a very keen political analyst given the times. But welcome to the Barbershop. And today's discussion was actually about how to build in India. And we've all done it in very different ways. And I actually wanted to, while preparing for this podcast, I was thinking about 2014, 2015, around the time we started up, as to how little we actually knew about starting. मेरे को तो कुछ पता नहीं था. कल परसों there was a person in my office who was evaluating the business, and he's like, "Why did you get into this market?" And I said, it seemed sexy, and I kind of like that. Pretty much was the sum of it. But today, I think when you are starting a business in India, how big is the market and how real is the market is probably the starting point. So wanted to get this going by discussion on if you were to build in India in 2024. I want to start today. How do you think about defining the market, taking a large market and creating a space versus creating the market itself? What are views? And I think we can just, I'm not going to ask one person, whatever are the thoughts, we can start from there.
Yeah. So, you're right. 2014 में हमें कुछ पता नहीं था, right? When I left McKinsey, I did not even know, you'll be surprised with this, Shantanu. I did not even know that you could go out and raise money easily or difficult. I did not know this. I thought, जो पैसा लगाता है उसको उतनी equity मिलती है. That was my world view of life, right? And so the market happened to me. Like I was trying to think about cold trading. I was trying to think about different things. I thought Amazon बन रहा है तो corrugated boxes लगेंगे तो वो बनाते हैं, let's start a business in corrugated boxes. But then I was doing this research, I started seeing trucks all over, right? And I'm meeting these drivers and saw this opportunity, and my insight was more to do with drivers than with the market, right? But in 2024, if I were to do this, I would think about a lot of other things consciously, like you said, right? I would think about the size of the market, which everyone does, by the way, but that's not the most important things. I would personally, from my experience, I would think about the profit pool of the market.
Okay.
Right? For example, in trucking, size बहुत बड़ा है, लोग 100, 200, 300 बिलियन बोलते हैं, profit pool 0 है. Profit pool है ही नहीं trucking में, right? Which I discovered, of course, after years of being in the space, right? So profit pool I definitely look at. I would definitely look at, is there a tailwind? कोई tailwind है क्या? Because if it is not tailwind, if it is organic as a market, to build a business, because there will be incumbents, the tailwind could be because of your idea. The tailwind could be just generally because of some market phenomena, regulation or something, right? तो tailwind होनी बहुत ज़रूरी है. There has to be a natural tailwind in the market. तीसरा मुझे लगता है कि profit pool, tailwind. Third, what's your entry point? What do you bring unique? Like we brought Relay into the market, which is unique at that point in time.
Can you explain Relay a little bit?
Because Relay was, I saw drivers have a very bad life. They spend months away from home, poor conditions, do not get to see their families. I was doing this research on the road, like meeting a lot of drivers, families, right? I traveled the length and breadth of the country. और वहाँ पे I started hearing this language called driver साहब ये तो 37वीं कॉम है, this is 37th caste. I said, what do you mean? साहब इंडिया में 36 कॉम होती हैं, ये 37वीं कॉम है. मैंने कहा क्या मतलब, क्या कह रहे हो? नहीं, बिकॉज ये आउटकास्ट है, इसकी शादी नहीं होती, घर से दूर रहता है और फैमिली नहीं है, तो ही इज़ एन आउटकास्ट. इसको तो हम ड्राइवर नहीं, अगले जन्म में किसी को ड्राइवर ना बनाए. तो पीपल लाइक अब्यूजिंग ड्राइवर्स एंड नो सोशल रिस्पेक्ट एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. आई थॉट इफ द प्रॉब्लम इज शादी नहीं होती, तो शादी क्यों नहीं होती, घर से दूर रहता है. तो relay is a mechanism where drivers change over in a way that drivers come back home every day, right? And the trucks keep running. I thought it's a cool thing, right? I mean, एक physical asset ज़्यादा sweat होगा, human life better होगी because the driver is coming back home and the transit time will shorten, which eventually happened. Transit time in India now is very different from transit time in 2014.
Correct.
आप दिल्ली से बॉम्बे 24 घंटे में जाते, दिल्ली से बैंगलोर 48 hours. I was hosting a party of my Rivigo, ex-Rivigo guys last night at home, and we said, अब 48 hours Delhi Bangalore is a norm. When we started,
Yeah,
the
4-5 days, right?
5-7 दिन लगते थे दिल्ली बैंगलोर जाने में, right? So I came at this idea from a driver first point of view and said, हाँ ट्रक बहुत चल रहे हैं, पैसा कैसे बना लेंगे, but never applied thoroughly कि profit pool क्या है, market कितनी fragmented है, ये genuinely will it translate into long term sustainable profit pool or not. Luckily that time e-commerce was happening in a big way and air capacity was choked, you know, and Flipkart did a big billion day just the time I started, and I went to Flipkart and Amazon saying, देखो, I can give you air transit time on road. They were surprised. We started using cheekily this tagline also, air shipment on road, and we started getting those orders. First 2 years were brilliant because by luck we had spotted a tailwind, not by like conscious choice. E-commerce was happening. By luck we had spotted this tailwind. We could price also well because there was a, you know, we are competing with air cargo, right? We could price well. The profitability was good. But the moment we went into broader trucking space, right, industrials and everything, we realized the market is so fragmented, there's so many other things, the profit pool is not there. The industry structure itself does not lend to a profit pool, which is a realization that dawned, you know, later. So if I were to do this now, I would very consciously think about sustainable industry structure hai, profit pool hai, tailwind hai, and do I bring in something which is a bit unique? And then of course, you know, does my heart and soul connect to the idea or not, right? I think those are the 4 or 5 things I would think about before, you know, choosing a space or a market. Easier said than done, right? I mean, ho jati hai cheezein, right? There's also luck and destiny and all of that involved in when you do things. But I think that is where, you know, I would contrast.
That's incredible. I think when Addy had come over, so he was, you know, at Reckitt, very senior, and he said exactly the same thing, which is Reckitt is in the business of creating future profit pools. So we spot a market that, and you should talk about this more, we spot a market that is actually very small today, but we have belief will grow very big in the future. And then we price in a way that the market gets created at a price point where profit pools are inherently a part of the business. And then it's a 30-year game. Ki, you know, we play for example, when the Harpic example, when we went from phenyl to Harpic, we said this is the transition is going to happen, and we'll price this at this point, and then we'll create profit pool because everyone will price here, and then 30 years later we'll be, when we are market leaders, we'll plan. It has panned out. But how do you think about from a consumer standpoint? You, Arindam, maybe you guys should talk about this from a consumer standpoint because you talk a lot about market evaluation.
Yeah. So I'll just slightly counter view to what Deepak said. I think those things are important, but we also have to realize that in India, it's a supply-starved country, and good supply often unlocks demand. And this we have seen across categories. So Lenskart is one perfect example. Before Lenskart, no one thought that eyewear could become so big, and because everyone used to have one pair of specs. Now everyone that I know wears specs will have 4 to 5 different. So the market expanded. I think some guy is doing it with silver jewelry. So silver jewelry again the market did not exist. And now like everyone, so my wife every month I see her ordering something because it's an impulse purchase. You buy it at 1,000 rupees and you wear it for 3-4 times and then you. So I think good supply often unlocks demand. So I think if you price the product in a right way, the market might not exist. For example, in our case, when we started, fans greater than 3,000 rupees, that entire market size was 300 crores. Today, that market size is 3,000 crores. That market has expanded by 10x in the last 10 years. Because the moment we started, all incumbents also started, they all understood that people are okay to pay a premium in fans, and the premiumization happened at a rapid scale. And this I've seen across categories after categories. Unlike US, right, we don't have that many brands, we don't have that many options. So if you get the value price mechanism right in consumer, we have seen many categories being created, and although you might start off with very small, but if it just compounds, it keeps on compounding. And then you need to ensure that you capture a good like share in that pie as the pie keeps on expanding.
Yeah.
The second thing that happened, like what is again very important if I have to start up today again is you look at some tectonic shifts that are happening. So again, when we were starting off, so e-com was very new. So e-com was a very level playing field, And the category consumer durables.
When was this?
This was around 2015.
2015,
odd,
okay.
yeah. So e-com was just moving on from say only books and mobiles and fashion to every other category, and it was a level playing field for everyone. So the same parallel today is quick com.
Correct.
So quick com is new for everyone. किसी को कुछ नहीं पता.
Correct.
So the moment you ride on that bandwagon, you can reach a significant scale, and from there on you can expand. So look at this tectonic shifts. I think today we see many shifts. At that point, e-com that was one. The second was design was becoming more and more critical, even in mundane products like fans. So people have started evaluating कि मेरे को ये चाहिए, I need these fans, I need it to go with our interiors and all. So this was a tectonic shift in the industry. So the moment you have 2-3 of these shifts happening at the same time, those, if you are able to somehow, some will be serendipity, some of them you start off with like have some hypothesis. When these 3-4 things mix, I think that's the perfect mechanism to build fairly.
I think premiumization is a very obvious answer to profit pool generation.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Like you take commoditized products, you're able to premiumize. I think we are seeing it happen in energy drinks and it premiumized tremendously with Arjun asking for Red Bulls. And then it kind of has, the price has come down, but the market has been created, so then there will be a new equilibrium of price. What do you think in terms of consumer? Do you think that market, that's how evaluation of market, like supply starved markets where there is a clear need, you're able to premiumize / give something which consumers don't have today / take advantage of new channels, you're able to unlock large markets even if they don't exist today?
Yeah, my preference is to always start with the consumer. Okay. Regardless of anything else, because
like the driver in his case.
Yeah, the driver in his case, or consumer who's supply starved, or whatever it is, and all businesses start with a problem. So defining the problem is very important, and then the question is how quickly, painlessly, and elegantly can you solve the problem? As a person, as a company, as a person starting up a company, whether you're a small, big, medium size, any size company, it's about solving the problem. And if you can solve the consumer's problem, then you have a business idea. There are usually only 2 solutions to the problem. Either you give the consumer what they want or a benefit significantly ahead of what they can get today, or you give the consumer the same benefit significantly cheaper than what they're getting today. So, just coming back to the Red Bull problem, that, energy drinks was a market that was created. So it was created at a 10x benefit versus, having a chai or, drinking a Coca-Cola or something. Yeah. But they priced themselves to a certain degree. So the next person who came in said, okay, I can't give more caffeine as a benefit, but I can give it at 1/5 the price or 1/10 the price or something in that range. So those are the 2 ways: differentiation in benefit, differentiation in pricing. Combination of the 2 is great, very difficult to achieve because then you won't have it. So consumer problem, solving it quickly, elegantly, painlessly, solving it with a price or differentiation, then moving to the next level, creation of profit pool. It again comes with a micro fundamental which is called gross margin. So high gross margin business, whether it's achieved through pricing, whether it's achieved through scale, whether it's achieved through great sourcing, whatever it is, you have a high gross margin. High gross margin allows you to invest in the business. Especially if you're building a consumer business, it allows you to advertise, it allows you to run good trade promotion, it allows you to hire great people, it allows you to experiment with new business models. So that's the next step. Then after that, I think you guys know the drill much better than we do. CM1, CM2, CM3, fix all these things, get to it. And then the next step of it is, once you figure out a good unit economics, is how well can you scale it? And how efficiently can you scale it? That's when runway and things become important. But as you said in your example, if you have a 30-year view, you always have a runway ahead of you. Yeah. And if you take a long-term view, you can always build the runway through actions. And competition is very intense in short periods of time. In a week, in a month, in a quarter, maybe in a year. As soon as your time dimension changes to years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, you find that you're not competing with anyone beyond a certain point of time, especially if you have a very long-term view to the business. So start from the very micro, what is the problem I'm solving today, to the long-term. And along the way, of course, you will discover new problems that you can solve. All of these elements you iterate in as you build a business. But you can literally build a business from any problem that exists today. You just have to spot the problem.
Do you think the problem has to be large enough or important enough to the consumer, or do you think that you can make that happen?
There has to be an element of truth of it being large enough. Then the question is, can you make that problem top of mind? A lot of brands are built on building relevance over a period of time, relevance of the problem to your life. And that's where some things like tailwinds come in.
Yeah.
And if you have a nice tailwind with you, it can take you all the way.
And what's a high gross margin in the Indian context? Like, what do you mean by that?
It depends on the business, but typically
consumer business.
In a consumer business, there are actually two ways to look at it. There is an absolute high gross margin, but there's gross margin into frequency also, which is important.
Yeah.
So what is the frequency of purchase?
Right.
So if the frequency of purchase is going to be very high, let's say it's a weekly basket.
Right. Then the low.
Then a lot of companies you will see operate in categories at a 40 gross margin, at a 45 gross margin, and they're okay with it because the number of turns that you get is very high. However, if you get into, let's say, medicines, OTC medicines, and we only take it when you're sick, maybe you have a couple of occasions a year, 1 or 2 occasions a year, then playing in any gross margin less than 70 is a waste of time. So it depends, it's absolute gross margin and frequency, but in general, if you ask me as a business person, I don't like businesses which are less than 60% gross margin.
And is the same bar on the business outside India? Let's say, is it different for India versus outside India? Or?
The principle would be roughly the same. There are some market realities where some markets are tougher, some markets are not, are not. But I don't think that would be more than a 500 basis point or, for
so
maybe
bahar higher ya?
No, it depends on the country. But typically if the market is expensive and is, let's say, more developed and expensive, and especially marketing is expensive in a market, you want to operate at a very high gross margin because you want to invest back into brand building and category building.
But it also depends on the category.
Yeah, depends on the category.
And also the AOV. For example, an air conditioner will operate at a much lower gross margin than what a BPC product will operate at. Because the air conditioner absolute value is 30,000, 40,000.
Yeah. And the frequency is once in X years, right?
Yeah.
So air conditioners operate at a higher gross
margin. Much lower gross margin. Much lower.
Because of the
AOVs are higher, right? So for example, a fan, right? A fan will, a 40% gross margin in fan is like much higher than what the industry average is. So, but in BPC, you cannot.
That's an important nuance. Yeah. So the AOV makes a big difference.
Yes.
AOV also makes a big
because
so frequency AOV.
Yes.
Because after
and percentage gross margin.
Percentage. So in a consumer business where you're selling frequent stuff, it's percentage gross margin. But in a business where you're selling stuff at very high AOVs, then the absolute gross margin that you take home per consumer transaction becomes important beyond a point of time. So, I mean, in business, one of my business professors told me the best answer to every question is it depends. so I think it depends is the real answer. But these are some of the metrics you need to look at. And I think in business also, there is no hard and fast rule for everything. Right. The rules apply to 80% of the situations, but you can always find an outlier where there's a different way of thinking.
The reason I ask this, Arjun, is because I have, personally experienced कि India में ना cost extra ही लगती है. कोई risk हो जाते हैं, कुछ cost तो margin हमेशा ऊपर रखना चाहिए आपके जो Excel में है versus जो real world में होना चाहिए थोड़ा ऊपर होना चाहिए because otherwise you start losing. That's my experience. You have to have
it also, if you're building a global business anywhere, I think some of the principles that Arjun mentioned, see anything less than 60% doesn't make sense, or if you want to get to 70% gross margin.
Right.
There may be unknown costs here, there may be cost of doing business which is different in some markets. So it probably settles down to similar numbers, give and take few points here and there.
Yeah, for example, in our business also, you're right. So in fact, thinking this, right, and we will probably discuss this later in the evening. McKinsey wo tha na, earns into turns. How much you earn versus how much you turn.
Yeah.
And absolute value is important. So we were told, and you might appreciate this, we sell trimmers. Now trimmers are kind of in the middle of FMCG and consumer durables because आदमी trimmer साल में एक हाथ बार लेता है, कभी-कभी 2 बार लेता है. But razor is something that he is repeating every month, right? So we were like, razor is high, high number of turns, so that's where we'll have a more profit pool, opportunity. CM2 ज़्यादा बनेगा उस category में. Trimmer is, acquired customer will buy only once or twice. But then we realized कि यार हमको अगर उसी आदमी को 1000 रुपए का खरीदवाना है, I have to sell him 10 razors, while I'm able to get, one trimmer sale and make it happen. And then we said, अगर ऐसा है तो then I can give some margin on top and make trimmer an offline business, very similar to what you're talking about with Atomberg. But हमारे कैटेगरी में लोग बोल रहे हैं कि trimmer तो सिर्फ ऑनलाइन बिकता है, सिर्फ Amazon, Flipkart पे बिकता है, या अभी nowadays quick commerce. And we have now started thinking कि if we were to make trimmer an offline business, where we don't have to worry about turns at all, just absolute margin and AOV and gross margin percentage, we're able to make money on that product. And now we are starting to think that now that fits beautifully. Earlier it used to be import कर रहे हैं, gross margin कम है, और online में margins जाएंगे, तो then it may not be a very viable category, and it then becomes a important. But he's right. I think, so for example, Colgate operates at 60%, Gillette operates at 60-62% gross margin, very high cash.
So the technology businesses operate a very high margin.
So I wanted to come to you guys.
At 60-70%, same.
No, more than that. More than that. 80-90%.
I think software will be 80-90%.
Software.
No, even hard technology businesses, unless you, because most technology businesses by their DNA are international.
Right.
You cannot pick a market and say I'll only do. There may be some very odd cases, and therefore you need to have, because the sheer cost of building business, including marketing, is quite high, and stuff like that. So you need high gross margin. You finally pile it up there. Product businesses, once you start getting the scale, unit economics starts playing for you. But service businesses, and if you look at the Indian IT business, it's an amazing story which most people don't understand actually.
But actually, why don't you talk about, you started in that industry in the 70s.
Correct.
And we have heard about, IT being the bedrock of Indian, economic driver through the 80s, 90s for sure. And today we of course have, many behemoths.
Correct.
TCS is India's most, or at least amongst India's 3 most valuable companies for many years now.
Correct.
But talk about how
And
that
also have the margin sustained, from 70s to now.
Deepak is very clear.
No, I'm just curious to know.
So let me,
from 70s
Deepak, you picked up the relay as a thesis,
Right.
and I'm using the word thesis for your business, and I don't know if when you're doing it, and I'll come to the technology side, the railways have had relays
Yes,
all the
of
time.
course.
I'm sure you picked that up,
Of course.
stuff like that. I think Arjun mentioned about problem, and then there are only 2 ways. So these are theses. So Shantanu, whatever, I was in TCS when it was less than, in fact, a good colleague of mine, we joined the boot camp together, and he asked me, तेरे को तेरा employee number याद है क्या? तो मैंने कहा नहीं यार कुछ, तो बोले मेरा, he said something 300 or something, and his last name was after me, so मेरा उससे कम ही होना चाहिए. So it's a very small company. I think the thesis was very important. The thesis of the CEO that time was software will drive computers. And I don't know how many of you were there, you probably were not born in 1973-74 when IBM was over 90% of computing. So just imagine we have multiple internet giants, social media giants, there was only one giant, IBM, and we used to call IBM and 7 dwarfs. Everybody else was 10%, and everybody built computers and sold computers and stuff like that. So you hired some programmers to write something, and programmers wrote applications, and it was hardware which was driving. He put it upside down, saying software will drive the business.
And what was the trigger for that thesis? Because 73-74 is when
you have to put your stake on the ground.
In India, I'm assuming we did not have, like a regular middle class family would not have access to milk.
When I joined TCS, my Tauji was rather disappointed that after going through a good academic career, IIT and all that, I've joined a company that, to seemed to him like a consulting services में कोई डॉक्टर की कोई कंपनी बनाई होगी टाटाज ने हमने तो सुना नहीं नाम इसका, we have not heard. So you're absolutely right, people did not know about it. But I think it was if you see, it was a category created, not just it invented a totally new thing, which is building software away from your own office remotely. That was the thing. And I want to combine this with something else. Sometimes the factors have to come together. If you look at the computing history, computers, you know, it's interesting that computers are as old as probably 75, 76 years that India has been. 1948 transistors were invented. 50s and 60s were scientific computing and stuff like that. Enterprise computing started happening in 70s, because by then computers had come to a point where they could churn out, could do the processing. IBM did something very important research on virtual memory. That means you could build programs which were bigger than your computer's memory, and that allowed you to build applications. So that was 70s. He would have seen that was happening.
From India, this is Mr. Kohli you're talking about.
India. He is India. And that's what I want to say here, that we said that electronics has to be put into a single chip. Intel was formed in 1974. The TCS thesis was interestingly 1974, 73, 74. And actually one of the CEOs of a large computer company, he challenged him, if you say that I have this problem, I have this customer, and I don't know how to take this software from here to my computer, I'll do it for you. So the first project came in 74, 75. And you start building the things. Problem solving, as you mentioned, is interesting, and I hear from you, Shantanu, McKinsey is all about problem solving. We only talked about problem solving. So it built to a point, the industry built, and it scaled up in 90s. So 20 years of real solid work. We didn't worry about, these terms like headwind, tailwind.
It's all tailwind.
कौन सा wind था मालूम नहीं, लेकिन जा रहे थे. It was cruising, it was very well cruising. So I think that is, I will give you another thing. When we created MOJO networks, if you see 90s, internet came, right? And the thing was, now if I'm in the enterprise, and I might talk more enterprise, but that's all I know. I've never understood how he keeps selling, one after another, or आप लोग जो करते हो मेरे को समझ में नहीं आता है कि, लेकिन it's amazing.
There is a pankha, there is jobs and trucks, there is whole host of other things, and Arjun has like a whole host.
The only thing I have understood कि drone के नीचे और airplane के नीचे Bernoulli's equation है, लेकिन businesses बहुत अलग-अलग है, But we, mobile, the technology came to a point where wireless phones came, and I don't know how many of you know Iridium. It used to have a brick-like phone. Company went down, but that was the big bets of technology. Internet came, and with internet came the ability of enterprises to connect to the world outside, and that brought in a whole lot of things. Our thesis was very simple, and people have started moving to mobile telephony globally, even though mobile connections were not very good. We remember we used to say landline pe karo yaar, matlab ye kahan sunai nahi deta and all that, stuff like that. We said the same thing will happen to computer connectivity in the enterprise. When that happens, security will be an issue, because no enterprise wants to expose, and we had firewalls to back it up. So I said, well, we need to build a wireless security sensor. So 3 years of research, 36 patents, we launched the company. So thesis is very important. I want to leave some thoughts with you, Shantanu, here, take maybe a minute or so. The computing history has been very interesting, but if you look at first 20 years of building computers in glass houses, scientific computing, enterprise computing, then computers became affordable for us to do computing on desktop for the enterprise for whom we work. for enterprise. So I go to the office, I open my terminal, not even personal computer. Personal computers came in the 80s, but I work for my. Then we started using computers for ourselves. Then we started carrying computers, which is laptops and mobile phone. Then we started wearing computers. That's been broadly the journey. I feel computers will start getting into the body now. Just imagine 8 billion, 10 billion population 20 years from today, and just the way we get vaccines, a chip is going to be installed because of DNA or whatever. Now you have 5 billion chipsets inside people's body. Just imagine the problem of software, technology, reliability, communication,
Healthcare.
Internet. Again, it's a thesis. I may be wrong, but in the technology business, putting a stake on future, what will happen, is very important. I just give one example and close. 1987, 88, when Shantanu was born, we were in Dallas. I was in Dallas doing business development for TCS, and I knew some people who were working in Texas Instruments research. So they were working on some cool stuff, somebody from IIT Roorkee, somebody from IIT Kanpur, my senior from BITS Pilani who was a gold medalist. They were all working on fancy stuff. Object oriented was something, was very interesting. So we used to meet over the weekend and we would talk about this. ARPANET was there. And in TCS at that time, we used to talk about engineering of software. Methodologies, design, scalability, all this stuff was very, very into our DNA. And I said, software is engineering. And all engineering are objects. I look at an engine, I look at a truck, I look at, let's say, a bottle of Dettol. There is something that has gone in, and I know it from its interfaces. I don't know what constitutes, say, for example, Harpic, but it's an object. I said, can we look at software as an object? And that was exactly the time Strauss and few other people who were working on object-oriented languages. I said, we need to start doing that. 4 years, we put into the research on that, and some of that work is actually now commercialized to $300, $400, $500 million within TCS. And the same story, if you go to Infosys, if you go to Cognizant, if you go to, they're all there. So that, I think, approach to nation building is important. And if you see there, America really stands out. They
Very
really
valuable,
stand
yeah.
out. I mean, their innovation engine is such powerful engine. So we take credit in UPI. I'm not undermining that. Those are great innovations, but we need hundreds of them if you have aspiration to become number one or number two or whatever.
Yeah, it's super fascinating. I just wanted to
please.
build on some business models which come out of it. So I think what Uncle has talked about is one of the most common business models, which is democratization.
Correct.
Right? So taking a benefit or a product or a type of product, let's say computers, right? And I think I was also born in the generation where computer was wow, you could not have a computer in your house.
Yeah.
Computer was something that big organizations put in a room the size of the studio, and it had compute and it would compute some stuff. And now the iPhone that you have in your pocket is more powerful than the computers, which flew to the moon in the 60s. So the compute power which has got democratized builds industries. So I think taking the thought that you had of enterprise software was democratization of this compute power that you had, and many things that you see are democratization. So that's one great business model, and all these business models, why the incumbent does not do it and the insurgent does it, is because they are all good ideas which look like very bad ideas initially.
Yes.
So at that point of time, it would have looked like a very bad idea to IBM, saying, why would we do this? It will cannibalize our business. Why will we do this? Not such a great idea. But it's actually a great idea. So democratization is one.
Yeah.
The second idea, which
So is democratization, is that a startup opportunity?
yes,
Because
it's democratization of anything which is an aspirational benefit is a startup opportunity for anyone.
I think if I can just come in there, I feel, one of the common themes that I think is emerging is at some level it becomes the lens of the consumer, either as a B2C business or a B2B business, right? and doing it in a different way, where somebody is saying, yeah, this can be done much better. Like a Zerodha saying, why should you be paying brokers? I can just do it for free because it's all tech based and so on. You don't need to call anybody, right? Or when Uncle was saying, for example, need to move software from one computer to another. Indigo, for example, saying low cost. I will fly people from A to B, not just in India, across, which will be great. Lenskart saying great designs, super cheap. We have a brand called MyFitness, which does chocolate based peanut butter, now market leader. For a long time people were selling like this American peanut butter, which Hindustan mein logo ko nahi khana hai wo, right? People want like tasty and healthy stuff, so they are doing that. So all of those sort of become a thesis where people are saying, yaar, ye ek product hai. It's not like you're not inventing something, but you are inventing a business model around it to solve a real consumer problem, either B2B or B2C. And that, I think, unlocks real profit. I mean, you don't really know what the potential is and so on. I didn't know, too many people will have peanut butter, etc. Right? I mean, but now it's like starting to replace jams, etc. People are becoming smarter about, ingredients. Thoda ye hone chahiye, kaise nahi ki kuch bhi kha lo. So suddenly then it starts becoming into your habit and so on. It takes time. It takes like 20-30 years. For it to fully play out, and you don't really know. You can't have all the answers when you start out. But I think when you start, you discover it as you go along, and then you build on that.
But I think one other thing I want to ask you is, I chair the mentoring program for TIE at global level, so that means entrepreneurs from everywhere. I think what worries me for a large number of them, because we worry about their survival, because if they die, we feel kind of morally responsible that we haven't helped them enough. Having a long-term view will not harm you. We're having a long-term. You may play very fast. I mean, Viren Sehwag is a good example. वो 300 जाएगा लेकिन मारता रहता है मतलब, But the capacity, because people say, oh, I've got my product market fit, और मैं देखता हूँ उसकी ओर कि some companies took 30 years for a product market fit, उनको 3 महीने में कैसे मालूम पड़ गया. I think this whole simplifying, you may be lucky sometime, but having a long-term view, for example, I was one of our startups from, I think, Surat had the peanut butter a few years back. I say, India has a very strong culinary tradition. So peanut, and we use peanuts quite a bit. Oh, peanut butter koi khayega kya? Maybe a urban phenomena, but what you're saying right now, maybe 20 years later, that's the way we are now having ketchup. I don't think we had ketchup some time back. Now everybody has ketchup.
Ketchup, फिर वो hot and sour ketchup, फिर chings, वो hot and sour sauce. तो थोड़ा वो
peanut butter आएगा and people are now becoming.
Now people will have crunchy versus smooth, and then chocolate, and then actual 100% versus sweet.
The peanut butter themselves might say, "Wow, we are actually healthy." I never realized that.
We launched
healthier versus jam. So there's always a comparator. Right?
Versus jam, they're healthy.
Yeah.
And we launched a Szechuan peanut butter, so people are like having that as people are having that with dosa and malagapudi. So it's a discovery, right? You don't have all the answers. You sort of try out, you get feedback. You try and see कि यार customer का
tradition में maybe I'm personal view. I don't like to mix cuisines. कई बार होता है
Every state behaves very, very differently, and India has a lot of rich people, but the rich are also very different.
Correct.
The paying power is there, but what they find aesthetic, what they find value in. So creating value, communicating value, and delivering value means very different thing to different parts of the country, and that's what makes it very difficult to scale beyond a certain point. And that's why you would see many consumer brands 100 to 200, 300. I think in that price bucket, there will be very few who would have got that 1,000 plus. And this is not just for startups. This is even for the larger incumbents. So,
how do you look at, say, Parle G? That's a national one, right?
Yeah.
So there are some brands, right? So there are some brands, and there are very few. I'm actually, while he was talking, I was thinking, how many brands are equally loved across the board?
Yeah.
And which is why, for example, something like you spoke about HUL, Brew, the coffee, has, and we don't know this, but for every state, and in fact for many regions, has completely unique
Mix.
SKUs.
Yeah.
Mixes.
The beans are different.
So they have figured out that
Yes.
under Brew,
Yes.
And it's not different brand. It's not like Brew Kerala
Yeah.
or Brew.
Yes.
Brew.
It's Brew.
But
But the skew in Kerala versus the skew in Karnataka
Yeah.
versus skew in Gujarat
Yes.
are very different.
Yes.
Very different.
it's like you're serving paratha differently in different parts of the
Yes.
country.
But this is a packaged product.
Package product.
So HUL must have gone through a tremendous amount of supply chain complexity to get the same skew to taste differently in different distributed
So
markets.
look at dosa as an example, right? Bangalore में जो डोसा मिलता है, चेन्नई में मिलता है, very different. Like Bombay, you find a very different version of dosa. You go to Surat, you will find the world's most craziest dosas possible, ice cream dosa and all of this. So, like people, like it's not a uniform country, and that's the very big challenge which a lot of brands
I
face.
want to ask you people, and I think Arjun is here, you know. See, we in technology, somehow when we think of a product or an idea or something, global is in our mind, you know, and that way we are, it's easy because if I'm building a, you know, enterprise application, whether it is for a large company here or for in US, largely there are some variation, but it's largely the same. How does it play out in consumer with this heterogeneity? Is it that this understanding, that awareness, does it help you to design something uniquely for this heterogeneous market?
Yes.
Or we fall short because we tend to follow what's happening on the Western world where there is large uniformity, but I still feel Europe is very diverse.
Yeah.
You know, what French would like and what East European would like. There would be variation, not as much as India, but there is a variation, right?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think I'll let Arjun and Arindam, because they come from like very clearly in durables. I feel like there are huge opportunities to find a product that solves a consumer need and then to really customize it for different geographies or different economic strata or different kind of people, age also. Like for example, for us with razors, age is now becoming an important thing. A first time shaver versus a wrinkled skin of a 60-year-old is very different. So you have to figure out a way, but your core proposition can be the same and you can have different things, right? Like brew, for example. But I think that stackability is important. You can't, the same thing will not work
for one size doesn't fit
for every, and especially in the context of India, you will cap out very quickly otherwise.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it's not just only the product. Say for example, even in the proposition communication, in our fan, like I'll take the fan example. So it has 2-3 benefits. One is savings, one is it looks different, it's smart. So for example, if I talk about saving, right, it doesn't resonate with a lot of, for example, savings resonates very well with West Bengal, very well in Kerala, because like the consumer psyche is like they're very value conscious, more science driven, saying itna saving hoga, itna ye hoga. That communication fall flats on his face in Punjab or say Gurgaon. नहीं चाहिए मेरे को नई saving मतलब
पंखा सुंदर देखो.
हाँ. Or for example, there is a region. For example, electricity is free in Punjab. वो फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता मतलब saving क्या है ये मतलब, or even in Delhi for that matter. So I think it's very important to also understand what communication works. Sometimes a product might be the same. You make some tweaking, some models and all, but the core communication also needs to be told in a slightly more different way. But instead of saving, maybe sometimes the fact that it's good for the environment, it resonates with some people. It resonates with a slightly
younger and more
slightly different people. So it also depends on. So the impact is not just on what kind of product you make, but also how do you communicate, and also trade. Like what do you communicate to trade is also very different. I think that's a different beast altogether. The trade in different parts of the country
very different.
Very different. Say for example, there are some people very relationship driven. Some people who are more business driven, saying ki at the end, if I am making money, your policies are consistent, I do business with you. Some people say, I have worked with these people for 20-25 years. Like I need that kind of comfort. मतलब relationship में ही ना पैसा तो आता जाता रहेगा. So I think trade also like varies very widely from geography to geography.
And actually, you mentioned about relationship in MOJO networks. You know, if you look at all product businesses, technology product businesses are typically channel business. If you like companies like Cisco, HP, they built huge channels. It's not that their products are always the top class, you know, but they have built huge channels. And so if you have a distributor, you have reseller, integrator and all that, relationship is the rock.
Everything.
That's a moat.
Yeah.
I mean, why Microsoft
And I'm
was
sure-
successful for many years was
Exactly.
because they had the moat in all the companies, even though
Yes.
they didn't have the superior software for a long time. Now,
Correct.
of course, it's a changed company.
Relationship
but-
with a moat.
Yeah.
You're absolutely. There are distributors who just value that one meeting every 2 weeks. And you're right, पैसा आता जाता रहता है,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
because that person shows up every 2 weeks, the person is true
And
to
they
his
just
or her word.
trust you for.
Yes.
And
No,
you know,
Arindam and I were talking, right? I read this. I spent some time with Havel's, promoters, right? And also read the book on QRG, Kimat Rai Gupta, right? The company has gone bust 3-4 times in the last 50-70 years. One thing which has stood out very strongly is their relationship with dealers. He himself was a dealer, ran his dealership in Delhi,
Yeah.
right? And the way they treat their dealers and channel partners, no company can match Shantanu. They swear by it. I used to, travel a lot doing logistics work for their dealers, also for the big brand, right? And I realized the dealer connect was very, very strong, right? They would, and that's something I saw in our industry as well, right? Because in logistics also, particularly in truckload business, it's run by channel partners. And, companies who had a 20-30 year relationship with channel partners, and, it was beautiful. I mean, during COVID we saw, right, the kind of affiliation these guys got because of the relationship and the kind of, strength these companies displayed during that time, right? Asian Paints is a very known example, right, during the time, but that's a very important moat. And,
We had Ankit Chona on the Barbershop. He's the founder of Hawko Ice Creams. Probably the fastest 200 crore. I think 4 months 200 crores ARR and so on. And he is the promoter family of Have More. So Pradeep Chona, his father, is an expert ice cream maker. Right. And this question I wanted to actually ask you is, he said when I launched Hawko, they sold Have More to Lotte, and now they kind of reinvested that capital back into building out Hawko. And now he says, when I went into the market, so now they're selling from 5 rupee lollies to 40 rupee choco bars, like the whole, fun. It's a very fun portfolio of ice creams. So when I go back to the retail in Gujarat, I wanted to go into retail again. Papa ko leke gaya main, and this is the promoter of Have More. And the moment he's entering like senior distribution offices, etc., people are touching his feet. Arey Chona sahab batao kya leke aa rahe aap? And he said he used to carry Have More ke bhi wo like. Do you think this is a promoter thing more than it? Even Sunil Agarwal at Joy Cosmetics has been on the podcast. He speaks about taking train journeys from Calcutta all over the country just to meet wholesale. Sanjeev Juneja from Kesh King has done this. Do you think it's a promoter thing?
Pavan Jain of SafeX, right? Last 30 years. I mean, the relationship he has with his channel partners, you can't beat it. Right? I learned so many things from him.
In fact, that is one thing when I teach a class, go to market, and organizing sales, not sales taking, organizing sales. You take a service business, technology service business, it's largely direct connect. So if you look at the software industry today, let's say we created relationships for 10 million, 20 million, $50 million relationships. Today, they are creating relationships which are like $1 billion 10 year and stuff like that. But I think this whole thing about creating that trust and building that trust with the channel and understanding that giving a margin to a partner will build your business, I think it's a very difficult idea for a founder who's coming from middle class with no experience in business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Service, you're right. So service mindset, or if you've seen people whose parents are from government service, etc.
Even
building
private also.
relationship with distribution is something that doesn't
Somebody
come
will tell
naturally.
you, वो जो है ना वो सब बीच के वो खा जाएंगे.
आप डर से आते हो, distrust से आते हो. That's the problem. You distrust the whole
Broker.
You have to trust it. खा जाएगा तो खा जाएगा यार. I mean, it's his
खाना
right to earn some money, right?
Correct.
And the reality, at least whatever I've seen, if you have 10 resellers, 2 or 3 of them will give you 70-80% business.
Correct.
There is a odd this thing. Suddenly they'll give you a spike. ये deal आ रहा है sir. Stuff like that. Now, in order to get those 3, you have to still sign up 10.
Yeah.
It's possible that your first 7 are not giving you.
Yeah.
But that's the journey you have to go through founders don't, and the reason I'm saying Shantanu is, see, if an economy has to grow, entrepreneurship has to prosper. And that understanding of what entrepreneurs need to understand, first time entrepreneurs, nahi samajh mein aata hai.
So just to build on what you were saying, we spent a lot of time in the beginning talking about the hardware of the business.
Correct.
Right? That you choose a market, you choose this. But now we are getting into the software of the business.
Correct.
Which is the moat of the relationship. And I think one of the most fundamental things in building a business is always have a win-win relationship. I think, you know, whether it's with your supplier, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with your customer, trusting people that you work with, whether there is a middleman or there is no middleman, that is the truth of how the market operates. And I think making sure that everyone wins along the way. And everyone, a lot of people are in it for many things, but the basic survival is you need to make money.
Correct.
So you need to make sure that everyone makes money along the way as well, and everyone is rewarded along the way, and you share the fruits of your business and the fruits of your profit.
Correct.
Is one of the best moats that you can build over a long period of time.
Exactly.
The thing that compounds more than money, I feel, is goodwill. I think over a period of time, you know, I mean, Deepak, you and I worked together 10 years back, but now we are here. But, you know, things, I mean, it's always a small world, right? So, it's, you know, things sort of come back and karma sort of comes back. And I think the best way to sort of, you know, get a lot of goodwill is to deserve it, right? Behave that way. And
it actually
the universe
comes
will
back. You know,
to,
you're absolutely right. I think these fundamentals of, वो आपके जहन में होना चाहिए कि आपने कुछ बनाया है, कुछ बेचा है. For something you have built, somebody is paying money. When we pay money, we demand a lot of things. So when we are being paid, are we being true to वो नहीं काम कर रहा है, अगर रेजर नहीं काम किया, my device doesn't work, then it is my responsibility. Unity, बाकी सब sort out हो जाता है. If you go to this fundamental of, you know, as you're calling it, this software of the whole thing.
It's so nice to have so many different perspectives, right? From someone selling fans to, you know, trucking to consumer, enterprise. And what I loved about market is, I always felt 10 years back when we started up, market is all about size of market and wriggle room, you know, kitna bada hai. But this discussion was about profit pool. Even when you were saying, have the margins sustained for TCS in 74 versus 90s versus now. We speak about tailwinds. You speak about long-term thinking. You speak about how startups have the opportunity to democratize something which large companies will probably never have the courage or even the long-term vision to do. But it's amazing for me, and I wish that, you know, that as someone going to start out, if I would be able to think about a market I'm excited about in this deeper way. I want to spend the next maybe an hour on other elements of business building, and we can talk about, you know, organization building for founders. But two large pieces which I think all of us have relationship with in different ways is capital and talent. Toshan had said very clearly that the most important thing that a CEO does is capital allocation. Everything else is kind of secondary, but capital allocation is important. So from raising to, you know, kind of allocating to different things. My personal relationship with capital has always been to kind of raise frugally, given the margin profile of the business was good, raise a large amount once PMF is there, and then not raise at all once, you know, the company starts spitting out cash. But I have spoken to so many entrepreneurs who have very different views on capital, right? Some people say raise a lot and then that capital becomes the moat because that's how the industry is. Some people say don't raise at all because you want to be able to do your own. You want to be able to do your own, you know, do your own thing on your own time. But talk about your relationship with. You are of course an angel investor. You see a lot of entrepreneurs do this in different ways. You have bought businesses where you have seen entrepreneurs do it in different ways. You raised capital in 2003 when India mein VC was not almost non-existent. You had to go to the US to raise capital. Atomberg of course has had, you know, totally. You have gone from one, you know, from extremely high amount of capital raised to now I see what you say on LinkedIn around bootstrapping, etc. But I think relationship with capital and how you guys think about capital and hence allocation would be a very cool way to start this section.
But again, I don't think there's one size fit all here, right? So, and we have seen successes in every way. So, there are many bootstrap successes. There are successes in consumer brands who want to build a business in a very capital efficient way. Because the only thing which doesn't work in my view is the moment you raise capital, right, you'll also have to deliver a certain return. And sometimes people overestimate what the return 5 years to 10 years down the line you could generate that kind of return, especially in consumer businesses. Because what happens in consumer businesses and many other businesses in India for that matter, I think since we're speaking about business in India, large outcomes are rare. So say for example in US, every year you would see so many $5 billion to $10 billion companies coming up, because the markets are very deep there in terms of the size of the markets in each of the thing. So because the large outcomes don't happen so often, what we see is sometimes people overestimate TAM. They raise lot more, keeping that in mind, saying if we do all of this, we'll end up here. And then businesses which could have been sustainable businesses, which could have been a good $200, $300 million outcome, those outcomes go out of the picture because you've already raised so much at a higher valuation. So I think that's the only risk. But again, I don't think there's one size fit all. Like we have seen successes, bootstrap companies building it for 20, 25 years, directly IPOing. I think we have seen many of those. I think what capital does is now the 20, 25 year journey, can you bring it down to 10 years? Yeah. So I think capital, for example, without capital, Atomberg could not have existed, because we had to invest in manufacturing, we had to invest in some kind of 20, 30 crores of burn was there and there was no way we could have done it coming from fairly middle class families. So I think capital enables a lot of things. Capital enables a lot of companies. We have seen many companies in India which would not have existed without the presence of venture capital, but have also seen many good companies which should have existed, which were solving consumer pain points for a fairly sizable, but then the outcome would not have been so big, and because they've raised so much, like the end outcome wasn't great. I think so. That's
it's a complex topic.
I want to.
I also write a bit about this topic.
I've heard.
Which has been quite popular and a lot of founders reached out to me after I wrote that post to VC or not, and when to raise capital, how to raise capital, right? And these are on my own personal reflections. Nothing right or wrong in here, right? I think one, it also depends on the nature of the founder. Capital raising requires capital raising and deployment requires discipline. Now, by very nature, capital is put in founders who are optimistic, bullish, great storytellers, want to win the world, right? So, not discipline or conservative or pessimistic views don't get you capital.
Correct.
But the moment you raise capital, you have to see the other side also, which many founders are. When you're telling the story all the time and raising capital, you start believing in your own story.
Start drinking your own Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid, right? You start drinking your own Kool-Aid, and stop seeing the other side of the equation. So discipline is very important. Two, I fundamentally believe, right, there are some ideas which do very well with investor capital, some ideas will not do well with investor capital. So ideas which require research, disruption, very large markets need investor capital. Ideas which are already in established market, a little bit better service or offering may not necessarily require investor capital. It requires working capital.
Yeah.
But may not require the risk capital or the equation which the equity capital provides, right? That's second thing, very, very important. Third, I think the investor horizon which Kiran ji has spoken about is extremely important, right? Many things, like we spoke about heterogeneity in the market and all that, it requires time in the market to know, to learn, right? 10, 20, 30 years, how many investors have that patience? How many, then there's a disconnect between what the founder wants and the investor wants and the board wants. It's there. You cannot wish it away. It is there. Fourth, which happened with us and happens with a lot of founders, is when you're successful early, let's say. India is also, contrary to what people may believe right now, a capital surplus market. There are a lot of investors chasing lot few entrepreneurs and opportunities. So capital raising is easy in India right now, right? Let's say you're successful. You will end up, because there will be people knocking your doors or your capital raising will be easy, you'll end up raising more money than you need.
Yeah.
And there it comes to, Arindam's point on time and all of that, whether, for example, if the market, you need 20 and you end up raising 100 because everyone is saying, raise more and, you build a cushion and all of that. But boss, you have to give the return at the end of the day on 100, right?
100,
And and that a lot of successful founders also initially make a mistake, because first time founders make a mistake. वो 100 raise कर लेते हैं, चाहिए 20 है. And then where does 80 go? Where does 80 go? To discover unnatural markets and opportunities. India इतनी बड़ी market है, आप Middle East में जा रहे हो. Lot of founders do that. ठीक है? क्यों यार? आपकी core market नहीं है मतलब successful. That's why you're going to Middle East, right? Or you think you raise more money. Let's say you are in a segment of the market, then you also want to go to B and C where you don't have any strength or innovation. That also happen in India. हमने किया यार. हम driver problem लेके चले, FTL लेके चले, पैसा ज़्यादा raise कर लिया, full truckload, right? तो हमने कहा नहीं, part truckload भी करेंगे, ये marketplace भी बनाएंगे, ये A, B, C, D करेंगे, कुछ करेंगे. That's because now you have raised more money because you could get the valuation of the future and therefore dilute less. So you raise more money as a question, but then you realized, इसको मुझे return भी तो देना है आगे. तो मुझे और अपनी market expand करनी है, addressable market.
Which is very difficult.
Which is very difficult. See, you came in with a certain insight or an idea, यार. उसी को successful कर लो. You'll build a good business. If you start expanding the market beyond it, A, B, C, D, E. So it requires discipline. I think if you are a founder in an established sort of a market where you have good insight, you raise capital, but treat it as an expensive debt. Expensive working capital, right? Like Arindam and all, they've done very well, right? I mean, you guys have done well. You've raised less. You've done well, right? You've kept your constraints on that, right? And it has given you time in the market. You're discovering and then everything. But if you end up raising more, then you will have if you are in a, let's say, completely disruptive idea, you're creating a new market, then you can raise more. Then you know that you're taking a risky bet. You will go all out.
Yeah.
It's a winner takes all market. It has some certain kind of network effects or needs technology, disruption, R&D, whatever. Which, by the way, only 5 of the 100 ideas you'll have, right?
Correct.
95 will be plain, standard. और 95 को नहीं चाहिए यार इतना पैसा. That's
And do you think investor horizon/investor incentives on your company versus your incentives on your company are kind of as aligned as? I've always felt that is where a lot of things go wrong, because what people expect versus what you expect on the same business is sometimes very conflicting.
यार first time founders के साथ ये problem है. You are so romanticizing entrepreneurship. You're in it for the first time. You're thinking सब बहुत बढ़िया होगा. 10-20 साल 30 साल अब build a investor वैसा नहीं सोच रहा है ना. He's saying I put X, I want this. This is my horizon. This is my horizon. I had to 5 years, 7 years, whatever the fund horizon is. And you are thinking 10, 20 years, your children, your grandchildren, your legacy, your purpose, your heart, your soul, it's a very different thing. And then the reality dawns that, utna romanticize mat karo, think a little bit like, of course, you have to think like a founder, you have to romance with the idea, your vision, your purpose and all of that. But also have that capital and investor lens only then the alignment will happen. So you have to step a little bit on their side. But
exactly, that's very, in fact, there is a module where we say stress your idea and think like your investor.
Yeah.
We also say for investors, sometimes get into the shoes of a founder.
Yeah.
Very important.
I'll just come back to what, like you were talking about what Toshan said, right? As a CEO, one of the most important things is capital allocation. So I'll talk about two ends of the spectrum because I get to see both those ends, almost every day in my life. One end of the spectrum is when you're running a cash spitting out company, right? You're running a cash generation company. And at that time, you are the founder, the CEO and the investor at the same time.
Correct.
You're all of the above. And that's why one of your most important jobs is capital allocation.
Correct.
Now, of course, in big companies, there's lots of governance, people are overlooking you, there's corporate, there's that. But I'm just talking just from a philosophical point of view. And from a philosophical point of view, there's just one clear metric that I have seen is the return on your invested capital on your annualized P&L, blended of everything you do, because you will do things which are crap return on capital or negative return on capital, and you will do things which give you 10, 20, 30, 40, 100x, even in an established company. Is that blended return on capital greater than the cost of capital, right?
Yeah.
Or typically, is it double digit,
Yeah.
right? At least double digit. And as long as you're doing that, you can keep running. And you'll have many different initiatives that you run, but you just need to make sure that these things are running fine. And it's very vague, but because every business is a different business.
Yeah.
But as long as you generate a lot of cash and you reinvest that cash back into your business, you generate a double-digit return, it generates more cash, and basically you have unlimited road for growth. That's what you want to be at, right? And there, I think in both ends of the spectrum, two things play a lot of luck, which lot of role which we never look at. One is the element of luck. Everything is 50% luck. No one acknowledges it. When things are good, people don't acknowledge luck at all. When things are bad, they say, my bad luck is very bad. Right? But whether you're having bad luck or good luck, at any point of time, you're having luck, right? And because luck has a role to play, everything is a probability. And the human brain is not designed to think in terms of probability. It's designed to think in, this is right, that is wrong.
Yeah.
We should do this, we should not do that. We should go here, we should not go here. So the moment you start thinking in probabilities, then you have a series of bets, and therefore you play a portfolio game. So you're always a portfolio manager.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that part on, and I'll quickly rewind back to, you're an investor in companies and you're angel investing, or you're a VC investing into companies. And there, basically I've developed a formula, and I could be drinking my Kool-Aid, but this is something that I've iterated and thought of many times, that even in that scenario, there are two things that you need to keep in mind. Thing number one is, what is the probability of the business being successful from here? Whether it is a great founder, a great team, a great idea, TAM, all those things put together. And it will not be 100% because luck will play a role.
Correct.
And ideally in a business, you want to find a business where luck is not 50%, it's less than 50%.
Correct.
So how are you optimizing down luck and making sure that this business can win in the good times, in the bad times, in the shit times, in the times when everything goes wrong, regulation goes against you? So how are they protected for the downside?
So in the unluckiest scenario, are they still
In the
possible to
unluckiest scenario, can they still do okay and survive?
Yeah.
Right? Surviving, to give a return on invested capital, you first need to survive.
Correct.
Right? So that is one set of survival, which is purely driven by what is the business you are in, how are you running the business, how are you operationalizing, how are you scaling. The second part of it is, because you are not spitting out cash, you are not the investor. You are dependent, as I say, and you never want to be, you are dependent on the kindness of strangers.
Correct.
And these strangers give you money and they want return on that money. So what is your probability of raising money? That cannot be 50-50. So if you see the Indian startup, we've gone through this study before. Before the first VC comes in, your chance of going bust is 90%. And then after that, at every subsequent round, the chance of going bust is between 45 and 55%. It's a study done over 10,000 plus companies. You don't want to play that 50% game. No investor or no VC wants to play that 50% game, because 50% is not a good odd.
Correct.
That means it's luck.
Yeah.
You want to get to a 70%.
Yeah.
Now, the specific framework that I've come to after a very long time is that investing in startup companies is a game of double probability. It's not a single probability. The first probability is the business going to do well? Are they going to generate return? By the way, even if that happens, people may choose not to invest for many reasons, because it's a kindness of strangers. They have many other choices. So in the second scenario, are they going to invest in you? And for me, the simple formula I've come to is that both need to be at least 70%. Because 70% into 70% is
Half.
49%.
Yeah.
And the moment that starts falling, imagine if it falls, 50 into 50 is not a 50% chance of success, it's a 25% chance of success. But if you get 90 into 90, then you have an 81% chance of success. So having the right investor, as you talked about, getting the right investor in, who will not invest once, but they will invest twice and thrice, increases the probability of success. And if you see, a lot of the best investors in India today are people who write 3 checks. They don't write a single check. And they want to be clear that if the business metrics move, we will write that second check. If the business metrics move, we will write the third check. And hopefully by the third check, the company will be capitalized enough to spin out cash. So that's the probability that you're working on. So if you can get that 70, 80, 90%, and you can get the business success to 70% plus, then you have a shot. Otherwise you don't. So this is how I would think of, the capital and how to use the efficiency of capital on both ends of the spectrum. And therefore the bar for getting into every subsequent company has to be higher and higher and higher and higher. You can't just invest in a romantic notion of running a business.
Yeah.
The other thing I shared with you, like in one of the first podcasts that we did, is that as you increase the surface area of the companies that you invest in, the probability of success keeps increasing automatically, simply because you have more shots at the game.
Portfolio game.
And if you're doing angel investing in India, first of all, or angel investing anywhere, first of all, I'll say don't do it, right? Because the odds are very, very poor against you. If you have to do it, make sure that you have a competitive advantage at it. Anything, it could be access to deal flow, it could be access to companies. And if you're in it, please take a minimum 30 shots.
Yeah.
If not 100 or 300 shots.
Correct.
But between 30 to 300 is the number of shots you need to take in places where you have a competitive advantage, not just you found someone, romantically starting a company and saying, okay, I believe in your, of course you have to believe in that, you have to be in love, you have to be passionate about the business, all these things are there, but you need to apply both the left brain and the right brain together to be an astute investor. You have to invest with your head, your heart and your gut simultaneously, and that's what's difficult. Thinking in probability, that's what's difficult. But we have a very high survivorship bias. We think of it, oh, this guy put this much money, 1 crore or 2 crores in a company and became 200 crores 10 years later. It didn't come by, it's not sheer luck. A lot of these people you see, they've invested 30, 40, 50, 100 times and had more than half their companies go bust to get that. So it's a portfolio game that they're playing. That's the way to think about it. So both ends, whether you're starting up, doing angel investing, whether at the other end, it's always a portfolio game. You're always a portfolio manager.
What's the IRR if you take 30 shots in your strength, in your area of strength? I know angel investing is very hard.
Yeah.
आप करते हो क्या?
अरे मेरा कभी पैसा बना नहीं है इसलिए पूछ रहा हूँ कि 30 शॉट तक पहुंचा नहीं हूँ मैं. So I'm asking 30 शॉट.
तो राइट ऑफ है.
मैंने तो अभी राइट ऑफ कर दिया है भाई, फिर भी पूछ रहा हूँ कि अगर कभी दोबारा मन करता है.
The bar is very high, yaar. The bar. See, I think speaking of the romanticizing the idea, right? I mean, I think as an entrepreneur, you have to acknowledge the cost of capital, right? I mean, why does capitalism work? It's because everybody is sort of trying to do the best for their capital. And so look, if you decide to say, I will do nothing, just put in like US Treasury bond, which is the safest asset class, तो मुझे 5-5.5% डॉलर में मिल रहा है.
Correct.
Right? I do it in India, I get like 7.5. You now put into like an index fund, right, which will compound over say a 30-year period at say nominal GDP in India. Call it 12-14%. And this is like literally you have to do nothing, right? And with the tax advantage and all.
इस पे कितना?
तो अभी इसके ऊपर is the expectation that you're underwriting.
I'll give you a simple
Right.
equation.
Someone who's
And
done it,
why I
like
say
Arjun seems like someone who's done it,
99.99% should not do it is because if you can't beat the VC fund, it's better to give the money to the VC fund. Seriously, because that is their day in and day out 24/7 job, and they know it significantly better than you. And just as you said, give it to a mutual fund manager, give it to an index manager. All these are doing this 24/7. They're running 24/7. So how can you beat it unless you have a competitive advantage? That's why I'm saying you have to be clear you have a competitive advantage, and then maybe then you see the watermark for a VC type of investment which is illiquid over many years. If the market is giving you a double-digit return, you have to have in excess of 15-16%. And if you can't make in excess of 15-16%, you should not be in the game.
यार मेरे को तो लगता है
And even if you can make 15-16%, give it to a mutual fund manager, right? So the point is, there are mutual funds which give you 20, 24, 25% on a CAGR basis.
I do it, but I don't do it for returns.
Yeah.
My entire thesis on angel investing is this is my cost to learn from younger founders. Ki this of my liquid amount, I will allocate X percentage to as write-off sunk cost.
Yeah.
And I don't expect anything back. कुछ बना तो बहुत ही सही है, लेकिन if I'm investing like Nikita for example, if I'm investing I would love for them to, you know, work out of my office, or I'm learning something new from them. Ki kaise, how are they, like this conversation, for example, on market, they are having, I met this guy, he's a BA2, he's a 22-year-old guy from McKinsey. You will not believe, okay, I'll tell you this guy's story, you will not believe kaisa.
Can I just add to that before that? So I'm also in a similar boat. I have no notion that I can make 24-25% IRR. So very similar to Shantanu, but with one added caveat: don't lose money. So do the probability in a way that the return is not less than 0, so you don't lose your money. So, and there's a method to do that. Don't lose your money, but I really want to learn from the founders, spend time, help them, work together with them, like Shantanu, like many others. And basically, for me, the greatest joy in life is to see them level up and to see them go to the next level and do better and build the new brands that India really deserves, and you know, solve the problems that other people are not solving. That's the fun of it, and therefore I will not allocate more than a low single digit of my total portfolio to this. And for everything else, when you want to make money, there are such good money managers in the world that you can go with. But you know,
that's very comforting, because after you laid out the strategy for angel investment, I was thinking we were quite irrational and erratic in doing angel investment.
Yeah, but if you keep a very small, and you
right.
have to get something outside of money. If you're
rationally,
if you're
it's very
doing
difficult
angel
to make
investing
that
for
case.
money, then you're playing the wrong game.
And therefore, you should only do it with money that, you know, you do obviously hope you don't lose money, but you should expect that you will lose money, right? Because, you know, otherwise it's only going to be disappointing.
I met this BA2. He's 22 years old. He's straight out of Stephens, joined McKinsey in 2019. So 3 years mein, he was mostly remote because college was not off because of COVID wave 1, COVID wave 2. तो उसने पहले 7 महीने उसने remote internship करी in a venture capital fund as a first year student in college. Second year he did an internship at Cred. Third year he did an internship in another startup. तो 3 साल उसने 6-7 महीने की internship किए while giving exams. Then when he sat for a recruitment, he got into McKinsey. McKinsey he worked for 2 years, and now he is starting up. And now this guy is 21, 22 years old, but I thought in that 1 hour meeting, I learned so much from him. He is saying कि यार, he 22 साल का बच्चा, एक तो 22 साल का बच्चा है. He's very Gen Z sensibilities. He was like talking about how shopping is used to be about discovery. With quick commerce, it's about more purchase intent. But with younger generations, it will be about complete purchase intent. कि उनको exactly पता है मैं वो क्या चाहिए, उनके दिमाग में है, लेकिन वो बता नहीं पा रहे, right? And वो बता नहीं पा रहे, लेकिन वो उनको दिमाग में है, तो वो दिमाग में जो है, उसको मैं कैसे manifest कर सकता हूँ screen पे? I was like, wow, यार, I was like, if I were to put like a 5 lakh check in your company, if you were to tell me this once in 6 months,
5 hours.
I'm totally happy with it.
That's worth learning.
Totally worth it. कि तू ले यार, तू like it's okay if you, but as long as I get to hear about how, because for my business it's important to know how younger consumers are.
It's so true. I mean, I have learned so much. I have probably got 100x ROI in running my own business from the money that I put into any company, and spoke and learned from the founder and learned and reapplied so many things that it's like the other way I look at it is I always tell people it's tuition fees. Yeah, it's tuition fees to learn how to run businesses in a different way, and also being, you know, working on another end of the spectrum, which is, you know, big company, large brands, large things, how to learn to not become irrelevant.
Yeah.
Relevancy is very important.
And that's very important because, you know, as you grow older and as you move in organizations, you want to be relevant, you want to be in touch with the consumer, you want to be in touch with the new ways of doing business. And, you know, we'll come to organization building, but when you're at the helm of a big organization, the thing that you need to optimize is getting the truth to you.
Yeah.
Because the truth never gets to you. Yes. It's very, very difficult to get the truth to you. So, and you work with a young startup founder who is romantic, you'll get the truth immediately in the first 3 minutes, everything.
Even if they don't want to.
And it's, even if you don't want to, and it's really worth it. It's really worth it.
It's worth the 5 lakh.
The other thing, Shantanu, is I think India में ना क्या हो रहा है अभी भी 2014 में बहुत ज़्यादा that we are celebrating fundraise a lot and we are discussing fundraise a lot. ये गड़बड़ लगती है, right? तो founder का पूरा ध्यान, you know, when I met my first VC, right? He said 50% of your time will go into capital raise.
That's crazy.
He said that.
That is crazy.
पहला check raise करो, I said, what are you saying? मैं business कब बनाऊंगा अगर मेरा 50%? But he was right. It takes your mind space, it takes your time, it takes 50% of your time, a founder's time goes in. That shouldn't be the case. We are celebrating fundraise too much. Capital is big part of the equation when a startup is discussed, right? We have to move on from there, right? We have to talk about organization building, business idea, market, real insights, all of that, right? And capital raising should happen, as a part of the game, as a.
लेकिन कोई पैसा डाल रहा है, somebody is putting money, and there is a risk capital. Time तो लगेगा मतलब.
हाँ तो उसको.
And it is easier to understand thermodynamics and wireless and Marconi than a term sheet.
That is no. I think founders have to become a lot more investment wise.
Right.
But you're right. It cannot take this much time. It has to be one of 10 things that you do. It cannot be one of 2 things that you do. Capital raising and running the business. That's not how it should be. Right?
Do we know the ease? How do we scale up, measure ourselves to, let's say, if you're doing a fundraise in Silicon Valley. So we did it in 2003, so that's really not a benchmark. But if I have to do today with the investors in India versus investors in US, are we 10 times more difficult? Are we 5 times more difficult? That may be a good benchmark.
So what he said
I would
about
say it will be easy.
Yeah,
this thing is today India
is
fundraising
easier
in
one,
India is
is
easier than US.
Way easier, yeah.
Way easier than US.
I'll tell you the thing. There are 2. I'll actually. So he's right. I think when your company is doing extremely well, and you are in the successful ones, right? A lot of capital is chasing very few opportunities.
Correct.
So you will have like 10 people calling you up. You will see investors fighting with each other.
Correct.
Then they'll get together and give a common term sheet. All sorts of dynamics. Then founders feel like, then they feel like what they're saying may be actually underballing. हम लोग और बना सकते हैं इतना पैसा all of that.
Valuation बढ़ जाती है.
पहला Series A और early stage वहाँ क्या होता है?
That has also improved in India because of the availability.
मैं पूछ रहा हूँ improve तो बहुत हुआ है, लेकिन how do we measure up to, let's say, Silicon Valley?
I think today, look, if you're in India and you're
same founder, same good founder,
you're intended to raise money for a well thought out idea, and you've sort of done your research, not like आज उठ के पहुँच गए, but you've done. I think if you're intended, you will raise money.
In fact, India is far better than the Silicon Valley because India has now so many sources of capital.
Oh, no, that's very good because at our time, Shantanu, in fact, there was a talk I gave, and I might have that slide. Any fund at that time in India that had capital or venture in its name rejected us.
But today there are a lot of family
So
offices.
that was, I mean, real extreme.
Everybody
and couple of them were honest enough to say this is a substantial idea, but we don't know how to. We cannot lead the round. Which is fair thing. I mean, that was the best answer I could get, that this is a fair thing. Intel Capital office in India thought that we were like a company they would sort of go to town with, and they did not put the term sheet for a long period of time. I knew the person very well. So we flew to Silicon Valley, and it took us about 8 months, and it was right after .com bust. And a very interesting thing that happened, our first meeting was with Walden, and I had found out that contact through the personal contacts and all that. After hearing me and Praveen, he said, look, 2 things for you, your idea is investable, and both of you are very well respected in your communities. That's good. The bad thing is, this is right after .com bust, nobody is investing, and you are not from Silicon Valley, both of you. But if you hang in here, we hung in there. 8 months later, we raised a round, and they led the investment.
How much did you raise?
Huh?
How much did you raise that time?
We raised 10 million at that time. Because
2003, and what was the exchange rate? 40, 45 at that time.
40,
This was
45.
seed,
First round, Series A. नहीं उसके बगैर मतलब see देखो, it was the idea, and we were, to be honest with you, I had a good run at building TechMahindra. It was a very good run. Nearly did an IPO. Ketan Parikh's scandal hit, so we pulled off the IPO. So we knew business very well. Praveen was a very well-known. He was de facto an inventor of Wi-Fi. That's what his work at IBM Research created that. Samir was a serial entrepreneur. So we were a good founding team, but the market was different, So that actually the US was, to me, those 8 months were first time 21 years back. So when I compare to that, I find the investors in India are, some of them, and I know some incredibly good friends who are very mature investors, but when I hear the founder story, I'm trying to figure out, ये founder में गलती है, investor में गलती है.
उसमें एक issue है. See, investors are driven by this FMV thing, right? तो आपने तो 10 million raise करके, I think you stopped after that. You just
No, we did Series B, Series C, D.
अब इंडिया में this FMV thing, right? अभी आपने A raise किया. You know, for example, if you don't need money, you're profitable and all that. Investor won't be happy. Yeah, I'm telling this blankly, right? VC won't be happy. He wants next raise. Even if you're profitable, doing well, and you have cracked the market.
कुछ dividends आया ना थोड़ी आता है ना?
नहीं, कुछ नहीं आता.
Dividend किसको नहीं चाहिए?
Dividends आया नहीं
उसका promotion FMV से linked है. उसको अपने LP को feedback देना है.
लेकिन वो जिसको बोलते हैं ना छोटे दिमाग वाले हैं.
No, but I can tell you.
But I think what he mentioned, na, good
I want to put
investors.
this down.
You're right.
छोटा बड़ा नहीं है. Everyone is driven by FMV, right? A, B, C. Yes, of course, when you go into like seasoned 45, 40-year-old history P, they know the math. They know, they are not driven by, they are driven by fundamentals. लेकिन बहुत अभी इंडिया की VC इंडस्ट्री स्टिल शैलो, 10 साल पुरानी इंडस्ट्री है, राइट?
So that's an issue.
Like सारी McKinsey की भरी हुई है.
No, Deepak, what he said.
Sorry to.
What he mentioned was very important. For every dollar am I investing, I'm keeping $2 or $3 for the next round, because some of the very good companies, they would go bust. They need that capital, because sometimes you go like this and then take off.
But his point is different. What he's saying is that if I'm putting at 100 rupees, okay, and now the company use that capital to become profitable, and at those metrics that company is worth 130 rupees, but is profitable, that guy is unhappy. Because what he has done, he has gone and told all his LPs कि मेरे तो company 300 का हो जाएगा.
I raised Series A, and we were profitable. We had hit this, big market of e-commerce, and we were pricing it well. We were profitable. My lead investor tells me, "Hey, you are the only company in my portfolio which is profitable." Great, but why are you profitable? Why are you profitable? I said, "What do you mean?" I thought business could the profitable. No, why don't you grow? Why can't we grow faster? I was already growing like 20% month on month. I said, grow faster. I know the operation complexity of the business. We can't grow faster than that. But that is the thing. They need FMB. They need capital.
Because उन्होंने जाके बोला हुआ है ना. उसने
I
जाके
think
बोला हुआ है
that
ना.
piece needs rectification.
Because sir, उसको भी तो आगे पैसा raise करना है. He has to raise money.
तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि वो पूरा see, if you take
he would be raising the second fund, third fund.
Capital. How will he raise capital? That is where all the problem crops in.
And I think if you look at, let's say, maybe look at the country level, like you talk about how India grows and all that. Some of these systemic things have to be fixed for good entrepreneurs to be invested, for them to grow and create wealth. Very broad level. अगर इस टाइप से छोटा सोचेंगे तो फिर कई लोगों को मार देंगे.
तो वो कब होगा जब शांतनु जैसे लोग इन्वेस्टर बनेंगे, राइट? जब फाउंडर्स इन्वेस्टर बनेंगे, जब ऑपरेटिंग एज आई वाज सीइंग, मैंने एक डेटा देखा कि इन्फो एज, राइट, नौकरी की इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आप देखो, like all the successful tech IPOs, majority of them are Zomato, Policy Bazaar, Info Edge, right? Such huge success. आप VC-led key IPO tech IPOs देखो, they're not so successful as, because somehow I'd like to believe, I don't know either the founder or the Sanjeev so well to comment on it, but there is something working there. Some operating knowledge is getting transferred.
But they don't have to return the fund.
Exactly.
They don't have those benefits.
It's a patient capital.
I saw a statement of Sanjeev saying we have infinite
horizon. Timeline.
That is amazing.
Massive unlock hai wo.
Massive unlock.
But that's when you have a cash spinning business.
See, one of the maturity of the Indian system is now becoming that, right? Now you have now there is a, at like 100 crore revenue, for example, businesses are listed. Like Unicommerce is filing to list, Traction got listed. So what is also happening is companies, founders are maturing, capital market is also maturing, right? So, you raise 1 round, 2 rounds, you get to that point. You can just go public, and whoever wants to sell is.
See, there are two things to
हमें बोला जाता था Aniket that don't raise from a strategic, right? That is what.
Shantanu is raised, right?
Shantanu raised, and I'll come to that. They both have a relationship, right? Don't raise from a strategic. ये problem हो जाएगी, ऐसा है, he'll come in from. I have started to believe, looking at the success stories, that the operating companies or strategics are maybe better investors than VCs. Look at Carrot Lane's example.
Insane वो example. Absolutely insane. example.
Knowledge भी मिली, patient capital भी मिला.
And
शांतनु का
And the final outcome.
I mean same. Knowledge भी और capital भी मिला. VC से आपको knowledge भी नहीं मिलती है, capital मिलता है जिसको आपको फटाफट next 2x 3x करना होता है तो impatience आ जाती है. Even if you do something is wrong, you don't get time to fix it because you have to also show bigger numbers. You know, at some point, maybe situation has changed.
I think you have to differentiate. There are good VCs and not so good VCs. So good VCs give you knowledge. They help you. They take care of you. They take care of the investments, and there are plenty of them in the Indian market. They're really,
You feel so?
yes, they're really. There
That's
are some
good to know.
really,
That's
really
good to
good
know.
VCs.
There are.
I work with them directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I speak with them. I co-invest with them. But I think just tying up some of the points that we were talking about. One point is that incentives drives behavior.
Correct.
And the investor and the founder may not have, no matter how much you try to
Yes.
align incentives,
They'll
it
never
will
have the
not
same
be
incentive,
100% aligned because
Of that
it
company.
depends that did they invest in you at the start of their fund cycle, the middle of their fund cycle or the end of their fund cycle. Their time horizon is then 8 years, 4 years or 2 years.
Yeah.
They behave very differently
Yeah.
in that period, right? Then they have their own measures. They have to raise the next fund. So these things you have to keep in mind and you have to understand it. And even for them, what drives their investing, the founder may not be just after business. They may be after status. They may be after wealth creation. They may be after, economic freedom, whatever it is. So you can bring it close together and it's not going to match. And I think it's an important thing to understand. The other thing that people don't talk about, and I think what you were hinting at, is where in the cycle are you today?
Correct.
It's impossible to predict the next step, but you need to position yourself correctly in the cycle. And there are some very clear indicators. You talked about one of them. If there is too much money chasing too few deals, it means that things are going to go bad at some point of time.
Correct.
AKA funding winter. We've seen, but we've not seen as cold a winter as it was in the US. I saw both sides of the winter. That was much colder than the winter here. Or if there are too few people investing and lots of companies looking for money, that is the best time to invest. So you have to see both things. Where are you in the cycle today? Where is the investor in the cycle? Which part of their cycle are they in? And the permutations and combinations are many.
Yeah.
So there's no such thing as, so the US could be in a different cycle from India at the same time.
Yeah.
Their funds could be at a different cycle, but quality of, two things, because I have done US and I've done Europe, I've also seen India. One thing I can say, and again, this may have some kind of a bias of sampling because I have not sampled 100% and it has a survivorship bias to it, but from whatever I can see, or at least I have access to, the set of entrepreneurs and founders in India are A+. There is a very good depth of talent pool starting companies in India. Many of them are in this room.
Including deep tech.
Including deep tech.
tech, yeah.
And in the set of investors in India, there are also A+ super astute investors who don't have FOMO, who understand the cycle, who help their companies. But because India is a country of very large numbers, the deviation from the mean is huge.
Yeah.
So there are people at that end of the spectrum who are better than what you get in the US, but there's a mediocre middle, and then there is the other end which you don't want to touch the money with a barge pole, right? You want to stay away from those companies, you stay away from those investors. So you have everything, but from an absolute numbers concentration, because it's such a big country and there are so many, both the investor pool and the entrepreneur pool is high. The last one which India has work to do is the depth of exit.
Yeah.
That is difficult.
Which is very
So the exit to IPO, exit to strategic, any form of exit for the investor in India is much harder than say fully opened up capital markets.
And that leads
like
to
the
problems.
US.
So when you have,
and that is the difficulty. That is why you need patient capital who is ready for decades.
Correct.
Who may be strategic, may not be strategic. That's not the matter. But you have to be willing to wait it out. And if you're in a fund life and you have 3 years left in your fund life, you're going to drive wrong behaviors with the wrong incentives. And God forbid you're at the end of, at the middle to end of your fund life, at the bad part of the cycle, you are going to make so many unforced errors.
In a company that might need more time.
Correct.
So then it becomes
You'll
very
make-
Arjun,
and-
most founders don't know this.
Yeah.
What you're saying.
Also, a fund cannot have a patient capital.
Yeah.
Because
you think so? I don't know
yes,
why.
a fund cannot have a patient capital because your IRRs will vary significantly. Say for example, you raise 100 crores and you return that same fund 300 crores. But whether you return it in 7 years or you return it in 10 years, will take your IRR from a 11-12% to a 17-18%.
Why can't I return 500 crores in 12 years? Why 307? I don't know why there is a 7-year fund life. I've always assumed it to be a given. Because fund life 7 साल का होता है. क्यों होता
No,
है
so
मैं तो नहीं
you
पता.
take it the other way around. If I was a founder taking money, I would very closely study my investors to understand where they are in their fund life, where they are in the cycle, to understand what level of patience they have. And you can't always be a chooser, because you could be in a cycle where there are too many companies and too few people writing checks. Then beggars can't be choosers. But when you have a choice, I think a lot of people get blinded by this is the highest valuation, I'm going to go to them, or this is the highest valuation plus name and I'm going to go to them. But at that point, you want to understand these are the good times. So I want to get in the right investors. I want to get in people who will be there longer, because I'm going to take long to give the returns. So their choice making, and when you have the chance to make a choice, make the choice. Don't optimize for the last 5-10% of valuation. I always say this to everyone.
The point, Shantanu, here is not that VCs have bad intent, right? Or
Completely.
different.
Yeah.
The incentives are misaligned a bit. I think the second point is VCs are exceptional people, but they're also learning India. India is a very young market for this tech startups and all of that, right? I mean, US is an established market. Sequoia has been investing since
70s.
75, right? India में सारे funds ही young है. सबने people are still learning, and it takes 10 years it takes 1 or 2 cycles to just learn, whatever we are talking about, it takes 1 or 2 cycles to learn. उतने fund की age ही नहीं है अभी. 10 साल पुराने सारे funds हैं.
No, and people are also evolving. Now.
Evolving,
We're seeing
yeah.
like people now start like continuity funds, right? So
What's a continuity fund?
So a continuity fund allows the fund, when the life is over, to hold on to that investment for another, call it 5 years, 7 years, etc. And gives.
So that is how you give space to the companies
so it
to
gives, instead of
grow.
returning the 300, you're returning 500. You're going and see, because you've gone to LP and said this is like 10 years. So you've taken some, you've given some commitment. Now you're telling him, okay, look, this is the portfolio, and for these I need another 5-7 years. And most people are open to that.
So Aniket, do you think this will be a trend? Because I saw some post yesterday.
It is.
Index funding में 843 वाला rule.
क्या है वो?
I came across it for the first time यार. वो 8 साल में 12% रिटर्न आता है अगर आप कंपाउंड होते हो. But 4 years, next 4 years में 12 आ जाता है, for next 3 years में 12 आता है. So when you grow your horizon, I didn't know about this rule. Someone posted it, some financial advisor. So which means your probability of a high IRR increases with horizon.
Yeah.
आरा हो जाता है 8 का 4.
8 में 4 हो गया, फिर 3 हो गया. अब तो तुम्हारा पॉइंट कि why are fund 7 years?
हाँ.
Why can't they be long? So Aniket, this should be a trend, yeah. This
No,
I think it's already a trend. I think there are two.
See, ultimately they are also raising money, right? So first time fund, they are raising money. तो लोग बोलेंगे भाई
7 साल में मेरे को पैसा वापस दो.
But आपने दिखाओ, आप 5 साल का
basically उनको अपने LPs को educate करना है, and they have to create structures by which if someone has to take out money, they can take out money.
But even the likes of Blackstone are doing it, where they're saying, okay, we are going to have like a perpetual fund or a continuity fund and so on. Because
Does it require critical mass of capital? Because you'll need cushions to give exits to certain people who might need it at certain time. And
no, absolutely. So they are essentially, everybody is starting to see, okay, how much can we raise and all of that. And, people are also learning, okay, how will it work and so on. But look, there you are making the decision with some informed judgment, because ये portfolio में ये 5 company है, ये किया है.
इनमें invest करना
So
है.
हम इसमें ये continue होंगे. We don't want to exit these companies, and many people are okay with that, to be honest. There are so many such examples. I think, and I was in my investing life, we invested in a company called Chola, right? And it's like, it's a truck, vehicle lending business. And we invested at $1 billion valuation, and fund life, all of that. We exited at $3 billion. It's now $15 billion. It's like a 10-year, 15x.
Now it's at 15 billion.
Yeah, it's just like keeps on compounding, 20, 30, 40% growth year after year after year, right? So
But
stuff
this
like
is
that.
this is the ROIC thing that I was talking about. That as long as you can keep giving, when you're spending cash, when you start giving the return, the initial investment, when it compounds, it always compounds much faster. And in compounding, all the greatest returns are made in the last 2 years.
So which investor doesn't
the
want their
longer your
20%
horizon,
IRR
the
over
last
15
2
years? Not sorted.
इसमें conflict क्या है? You know, like the great investment theory. For example, जो पुलक प्रसाद की book है, right? The
Darwin.
fantastic book, right? I mean, what you can learn from Darwin. It has completely contrarian views to how VC invests, right? अब देखो, right? He says, you know, like be pessimistic, be long term, you know, all of those things,
Yes.
right? Which a VC is very different. So investing कैसे अलग हो सकती है? Why can't you have public market since you are a public
Sensibilities, yeah.
sensibilities to VC investing?
So I think investing comes in various forms. I think in public markets there is like history. You are seeing every number, every quarter, etc. It pays to be a little bit pessimistic because market forces sort of takes things up and down. In venture capital, by definition, you have to be optimistic. Otherwise, आप नहीं करोगे, क्योंकि कुछ है ही नहीं ना. You are betting on something to happen where the
something out of nothing.
You are betting on something to happen where the odds.
But take the best of the public market, right? Compounding, long term, you know, all of those you bring in, right? I mean,
Public
Remember
market,
that?
maybe a lot
Patient,
of people
slow-
don't do compounding. They are busy doing F&O and trading.
I'm talking about
I'll tell you one more thing. I think incentives are also, one is of course financial incentives. Second are social signaling in the community. Broadly आप जो बोल रहे हो आधे McKinsey के लोग हैं. It's a very small group of people. It's a very small.
That's a big fact. आधे McKinsey.
आप एक बार
जब मैं रेस कर रहा था, सब McKinsey के लोग. I knew everyone.
वो McKinsey का को माफिया है सर.
Mafia है.
नहीं, but also what, see the way they talk about each other, like Mukul, right? Outstanding guy, but he's known for Swiggy, Meesho, and 3-4 big names which are like his Midas Touch. His Midas Touch article will have all his big investments. You look at, you know, Kaval, Mama Earth, Boat. He's known for 2 big outcomes. उसका portfolio people will not see, but in public market it's a complete portfolio. Prasad is talking
इसमें
about.
power law चलता है.
हाँ, it's the
Exactly.
power.
So VC is all about that
खतरनाक
one
power
big,
law.
one
अब
big
big problem है. खतरनाक power law है. So which means out of 10, 1 goes well. 9 founders तो sideline हो गए. You know, I know a founder. He said he used to come. He said, yeah, this guy I like the founder. He's on my board. So sorry, investor. But he doesn't talk to me. वो दूसरा कंपनी है, उसके फाउंडर के साथ वो रोज बात करता है. मेरे साथ बात नहीं करता है. तो मैं उसको क्या बोलता कि तुम पावर लॉ में.
You're on this side.
By the way, the company is doing very well. It's a unicorn and all that. This founder, वो मेरे साथ बात नहीं करता. वो दूसरी कंपनी डेकाकॉन है. उसके फंड का रिटर्न 80% उससे है. तो obviously he'll prioritize that. That's the issue. This
But that's the
company-
thing. For the analyst or the associate or the principal who's climbing the ranks there, उसको तो यही दिख रहा है ना कि what is my reputation going to hinge on. Private equity में तो वही है.
तो 1-2 कंपनी है यार.
हाँ?
आपने 20 में डाला है. That's also a problem which I see.
It is a huge
18
issue.
कंपनी को वो attention ही नहीं मिलती है.
तो you-
But I think one thing you should realize again coming back to survivorship and luck and things like that, the person who is talking 80% of the time to one company, how can that person believe it's because of them that the success of the company is happening? Because it's the founder who's building the company, it's the team who's building the company. And honestly, I also see life as an investor and also as an operator. As an investor, you don't know. In most cases, you don't know. You are just playing along. And you don't know it's going to be, and that's why there's a power law. Because if you knew the power law, and you knew that this company is going to be successful, why did you invest in the other 9? Right?
नहीं,
So
after it took off.
फिर भी नहीं पता होता, कुछ भी हो सकता है.
कुछ भी हो सकता है,
We are seeing $1 billion companies go bust.
FMV तो
Right?
उसका 80% अभी उससे आ रहा है, कंपनी से आ रहा है.
But
तो उसका attention 80% उससे जा रहा है.
What I'm trying to say is that if companies were built by people talking to each other, you know that's not how a company is built. So I don't think anyone should be under the
investors
illusion.
believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You should not be under the illusion कि ज़्यादा बात करने से company बन जाएगा.
See, intellectually you understand.
Yeah.
लेकिन operating wise
बहुत difficult.
And the other problem,
जैसे आपने रिले का बोला ना, वो थोड़ा एक लेवल डिटेल में जाओ ना, तो people like me will mess it up completely because हमको समझ नहीं है उसकी.
and the other problem that I see is कि the amount of fund that is now available. And the problem with India is, you look at your public market returns. Public market last 5 to 7 years has been giving you 15-16%.
Correct.
Now we see so many funds which are there, right? Like there are 50 micro. So as an entrepreneur now it's very easy to raise.
Correct.
Well, very easy to start, and I think across stages the amount of fund available is significant. I think beach में एक stage आता है A, B, will slightly less, but early stage is abundant. Now the problem is, if each of these VCs, the micro, जो 50, 60, 70 micro VCs है, will have a fund size of 100 to 200 crores. If they are not able to return to their LPs 16-17% or beat the private markets by a percentage points of 3 to 4%, then I think it will be very difficult for the Indian startup ecosystem, and which might be a case 6 to 7 years down the line, because public market is there. Matlab, say the moment you reach a certain scale, any banker will tell you go public. Public will give you 2x that of what a late stage private will give you in today's market, and that's one challenge that I see which could emerge in terms of capital in the next 5 to 6 years.
And I think
Because
that
all
the
of these funds will
ease
now
of
have to return to
exit-
their LPs.
I think US, the ease of exit sometimes make many investments viable from
नहीं, I
this
think
one.
more than ease of इंडिया में पब्लिक मार्केट आपको इतना ज़्यादा रिटर्न दे रहा है, तो पीपल विल
Opportunity cost of
बेंचमार्क यू
capital.
टू निफ्टी, राइट? मतलब आप मान लो 12% रिटर्न दे रहे हो, आपका हार्डल रेट होगा 8%.
लेकिन US में भी see over last 40 years, the public markets, Nasdaq have given good returns, gone down, all that. But the exit mechanisms have been easier.
The biggest issue for private equity today is exit.
Apart from an
Biggest issue.
IPO, right? Actually, strategic exits are so far and few in India.
कंज्यूमर में हो जाता है थोड़ा बहुत.
वो भी मुश्किल है क्योंकि इंडिया में ना एक माइंडसेट, आई थिंक आई स्पीकिंग टू समवन सेइंग कि जब भी आप कुछ बेचने जाते हो ना कंपनी, लोगों को लगता है कुछ गलत है, अभी बेच रहा है. दैट इज द इंडियन मेंटल, मतलब हियर एग्जिट मतलब इट्स नॉट सेलिब्रेटेड. तो द फर्स्ट माइंडसेट इज सेइंग कि बेच रहा है, मैं खरीद रहा हूँ, मतलब कुछ तो गलत होगा.
Because M&As can't successful.
हाँ, very few other than Titan, you take out Tata's.
That's a constraint that we need to remove then.
If you take out Tata's as an example, very few companies, see, even the large CPG incumbents have started acquiring, but I don't see any of them, like, in fact there are some, couple of them didn't do that well, like what it's there in the market, right? So,
And in,
Very
see,
difficult.
in US
Mergers
it's
are
very
so
easy.
complex.
yes.
M&As are like, Veritas, Symantec. Symantec acquires Veritas. I mean, it's probably, some of us who know it, probably the most unlikely marriage. Didn't work out, split.
Yeah.
So their building is right next to where we live.
Yeah.
It used to be called Veritas building. Then it came to be called Symantec building. Now we are back to calling it Veritas. Somebody asked me, यार ये change कैसे होता है? मेरे को complex story मत जाओ इसके बीच में.
No, I think we need more success stories like Carrot Lane. So the moment we see 20 other success stories like Carrot Lane, I think that will
But it requires institutions like
institution like
Tata
Tata's.
Group
हाँ.
to kind of back
Yes.
it. Yes. Carrot Lane also, you talk to Mithun.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that company also went through so much, but then figuring out offline, putting the Tanishq brand on it. There were
And
lot
the thing
of
is that
synergies
Tata did not interfere. So if you talk to Mithun, he'll tell you that Tata's came to the board meeting 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And on ground, they are fiercely competing.
Yeah.
Titan and Carrot Lane were competing head against head every,
It's actually, it's win-win.
yeah, win-win. Yeah,
Win-win,
yeah.
Two brand. But do you think IPOs are a good exit opportunity now?
I think
Or are there few data points right
no. I think IPOs are becoming a real, and actually I think if you are an Indian founder, I think the most viable exit option to give to your investors, even if you don't want to exit, I think is an IPO. I think it just makes you the equivalent of like financially free, right? Because it's, you're listed, you can raise money when you need it, and so on. Your performance is available for the public, so you can reach. There is a dialogue in this Guru movie, right? Apni rakam apna munafa, right? So he sort of says, okay, I don't want to take debt now. I will go to the public market. He created that equity cult, right? And he's sort of saying, and based on that, he was able to like raise money for essentially venture capital, right? India's largest refinery in Jamnagar and so on, was based on his track record, which he showed to the wider public. So I think as an Indian entrepreneur, strategic exits are far and few. You have to look at an IPO as a real mechanism, and the markets are also maturing now. NASA has sort of shown the way. No one's sort of expecting you to have like fully formed like HUL type 25% margins and so on. You have to show a path, right? And I think it's important for entrepreneurs to also sort of be comfortable with building in public, like
Exactly.
truly building in public, right, at
Exactly.
some level.
Yeah.
Start showing improvement. Zomato showed that, right?
What a story.
And
That's
just
a very
see the
interesting
mode they
thing,
now have
yeah.
versus the other
Very
guys,
interesting.
right?
See, if you look at IT services industry, see, India is one place where our top public companies are service companies.
Yes.
It doesn't happen anywhere else. We are kind of a global service powerhouse, and we tend to underplay that globally. If you look at NASSCOM, I was looking at NASSCOM, $250 billion software IT services, 3,000 members, add another couple of thousands. There are many companies, very smart founders in $10 to $100 million. And a bunch. In fact, I gave a talk at a company in Chennai in March, $250 million. I didn't know them. until somebody introduced.
IT services.
IT services. Now, just imagine, picking your point, say 50, 60, 100 of them do an IPO. Now, these are founders who are genuine, competitive, they've found their niche to build that company. Now, just imagine what it does to that company, what it does to the investor. Now, I have, it's like the option to invest in good companies. And to
reward
me, I think-
employees.
Exactly.
To
And
acquire
they're all
something else, you have
bootstrapped or
currency.
they-
Bootstrapped.
They're
See,
bootstrapped.
most of them are bootstrapped.
Hundreds of them.
I mean, I'm giving you 3,000 members. 3,000 members, so you take out $250 billion TCS, पहले 50 निकाल दो आप. Many companies, I know founders in last 3 years who have taken it from 5 crore to 50 crore, 100 crore. I'm advisor to a company, 4 years back when the CEO constituted the advisory group, he was 150 crore. Today they are 600 crore. And they are being knocked on the door. I said, you can. Founder is very conservative, rightfully so. He said, यार यहाँ तक जाते हैं. मैंने बोला 6 quarter का, you need to see all of that. And there are many companies like that. So, I think picking your point, my take is I think we don't play to our strength. We keep looking elsewhere.
Like one of the jokes is the surest way to lose money is to put money in an IPO. Some of them go on to build, but not to how they did when they did IPOs before. But however, if you come to the Indian market, while it has low depth in that space, the Indian market is the market where the chance from IPO to 100x the value of the company is the highest in the world. In fact, there's a full article, I'll share it with you, where they've done an analysis of the last 30, 40 years, where the Indian stock exchange is the market where you get 100x opportunities.
Absolutely,
the most.
many.
And therefore, a lot of companies which are, let's say, at these numbers that we're talking about, for IPO is a great exit, as you say. And it's not just a great exit for the current investors, but it's great for people to invest and grow with the company over time, because
And these companies now want to go to IPO? Is this
Arjun, I want to ask
and you have a secular tailwind here. That's the most important thing, right? You're sitting on the secular tailwind of a lifetime.
I want to ask you this question. See, if you have to play global, can we get to a stage where I'm a founder in Silicon Valley, Austin, London or Cambridge or whatever, and for me the best IPO is Bombay. Global company, but I'll do my IPO in. Why do we need to restrict to Indian companies? I mean, NASDAQ, people go to NASDAQ from all over the world. Why not open it up completely? Now, Indian retail investor obviously will benefit. If they are benefiting, people are getting wealthier, you will see wealth creation happening. So maybe that may be an opportunity.
Now this is established that Indian stock exchange is a better stock exchange to list than in the US.
But it's not on the mind share of.
No, not necessarily. It is
is
the
not.
place where you can find 100x
Even
deals,
if we get Indian
because
people to
it is not as
to
transparent
list in
as
मैं
India.
बोल रहा हूँ यार कि cut open is like.
But it's also like it's regulated because you protect.
Yes.
You protect the investor, because then you like some companies sitting in the US, you won't have a.
थोड़ा risk नहीं लोगे तो कैसे जाओगे?
No, but that's the question is thoda.
No, my point is, see, you don't get to number 1 or number 2 spot in anything until you do something different. You
But
won't
going
get it
public
there.
early, I think that we'll see. I think
So
we'll see
that's
many
a-
companies
yeah.
listing.
Also, what you were saying that day, like he was saying, 20,000 crore ka SIP आता है India में आजकल. So
20,000.
Zerodha number of demat accounts used, I saw a post, is almost 3x.
So people
पैसा
sort
बहुत
of
है.
miss Zerodha, but there's a company, I invested in a company called
अभी
Angel One.
FI से कोई फर्क थोड़ी
It
FI से फर्क
IPO'd
पड़ता है
at
market.
300, yeah. Same business. It's like number 2 or number 3. It's now 10x in like 4 years. So everybody saw the Zerodha success story. You couldn't invest in Zerodha. Angel IPO'd at the same
Grow
time.
did well, I think, in the private.
But growth is private, so you can't invest in grow. So
Which is the other company you see?
Angel One.
Angel
So
One.
Angel broking it converted to Angel One. It's like 10x यार over 4 years. It's just incredible. And उसमें dividend भी दे रहा है.
So वही मैं बोल रहा हूँ you know बड़ी
like
tailwind
Dividend से
market में
retirement की
4-5
life चलती है ना?
हाँ.
Sorry?
See बड़ी tailwind थी 5 की 5 कंपनियां जिस मार्केट में आई they all did
All
well.
of them did well,
All
yeah.
of them did well.
Correct.
So to that extent, market is a much bigger force than an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right? पांचों के पांचों successful हुए यार. I mean you can.
No, and it's the power of the domestic investor. You know, thanks to influencers, etc. People are saying, "Acha, karo, invest karo."
Mutual fund सही है.
So लोग कर.
Tailwind थी यार 5 साल में हुआ ना.
No, that's true na, because before this, everyone was investing in either FD or gold or real estate, which was, you know, not that productive, right? Yeah. You are actually giving capital to entrepreneurs who are putting it at great return on incremental capital, and you know, it's adding to the wealth of the country.
I also feel there are a lot of like different kind of, like yesterday at breakfast table, Dad was telling me randomly, he keeps like kind of dissing me, you guys are all very unidimensional kind of entrepreneurs. पंखा बना रहे हो, shaving kit बना रहे हो, कुछ शेजवान सॉस बना रहे हो. Why can't India create the next airline manufacturer in India?
We have only two, Airbus.
And Boeing is like very, very.
And why do we want to create phones and ape China and everything? Absolutely. Create, give 15, 20 years, put about 20, 30, 40 billion dollars, create a. I think we have avionics, electronics,
heavy
operator, expertise. Give it a shot.
I would love to see entrepreneurs sort of go after. I mean, I think
one of the
most incredible things, you know, we are seeing now with big capex boom, etc. Would love to see people sort of say, you know, मैं wind turbine बनाऊंगा, right?
Actually, there are two startups I have seen, small scale wind turbine. There was a women entrepreneur in our mentoring program. And so there are people like that.
You spoke about transmission towers also.
Yeah, because you know, transmission towers.
Build the aircrafts.
Wind industry, you know, so last year India
बाद में bombardier को खरीद लो, बनाओ यार.
The industry is growing like 5x, right? And it's completely supported by the government because power shortage है तो भाई plus renewable लगाना है. तो यार सब कुछ चाहिए हमें. Transmission tower चाहिए, cable चाहिए.
Aniket, who is doing these bold ideas, right? I mean, who are entrepreneurs?
No, it is the large established founders or large established companies.
Large established companies are doing it.
But they are doing it entrepreneurially.
They
are saying कि हम करेंगे.
But नया entrepreneur नहीं कर सकता because उसको पैसे नहीं.
मैं तो सोच ही नहीं पाऊंगा यार.
नहीं वो कर नहीं सकता.
सोच
These are not.
तुमने भर दिया अंकल ने तुम्हें breakfast 4 और breakfast ले आके
हवाई जहाज बनाना.
अरे हवाई जहाज बनाना है. लेकिन तुम्हारे को 5 इन्वेस्टर भी तो चाहिए जो उतना bold सोचे.
I was listening to his podcast with
market, ये वो
Kapil, you know, the founder, the CEO of Akasa, and they were talking about duopoly, and मैं सुन रहा था यार तीसरा maker तो आ सकता है. Why did Airbus come? Because moment Boeing acquired McDonnell Douglas, it would have become the only company, and Europeans created Airbus.
And Akasa has come, right?
If you want to be
Akasa
airline भी तो आ सकती थी.
Akasa has come, no? So you know, I mean, the capital is like 50 million. It's not like insane in the Indian context.
It was an open space for a while, right? I mean, Indigo is at
65% market share.
Create a research. I mean, see, we have everything that is needed today. We have everything, including research institutions.
Not a lot.
200 crore.
Indigo is only 200 crores?
I think so. ऐसे कुछ number है. 200 crore से ज़्यादा नहीं.
No, not a lot, yeah.
That's it. 2006 or 7, 200 crores.
No, and I mean, some of these companies are very capital efficient. I mean, you know, like Inox Wind, for example, you know, they will be like 20,000 crores market cap. The capital employed in the business would have been like 2,000 crores. Not insane, right?
Wow.
You know, and I mean, they might actually, you know, as this industry grows, etc., it's very possible this can continue to grow and scale, you know, for a long period of time. Because, you know, entire India ka growth ho raha hai 8% pe electrification.
So why can't a VC and an entrepreneur come and let's say Inox?
And now that is happening a little bit, right? It's happening a little
हो रहा है.
You know, like, you know, what is happening in like EV, for example, right? I think Mahindra and Tata have, you know, sort of gotten much money and so. Because that is like long lead time. You need to obviously have a track record as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Hero Group also is coming. EV though I think has attracted a lot of capital.
Yeah. So
I think bolder bets will be taken. I think as the
Yeah.
ecosystem matures, second time founder, third time founders will take more bolder bets.
I'm really hoping. I really hope like we see beyond consumer.
Yeah.
Tech.
Yeah.
You know, finance. I think you have done something quite amazing with your new venture. I think it's fascinating to hear about how you saw the opportunity and like Anupam told me in
yeah,
a
the
lot
biggest
of depth.
मुझे लगा सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम तो नौकरियां हैं, जॉब्स है, एम्प्लॉयमेंट है. बाहर 300 मिलियन का शॉर्टेज है. इंडिया हर साल 20 मिलियन यूथ आ रहे हैं. वी आर नॉट एबल टू क्रिएट जॉब्स एट 8-9%. एंड that speaks to my heart, right? To drive a problem कि jobs नहीं है इंडिया में यार. There are so many young people coming.
See, that brings me to personal thought. See, bottom end of entrepreneurship. lifestyle businesses, where I create 10 jobs, 5 jobs, 20 jobs, and thousands of them. You know, even the ecosystem in which like Thai and all, everybody talks about unicorn. See, a Tendulkar or a Virat Kohli come by themselves. They don't need you. Who needs us is these business. So you have, let's say, 1,000 entrepreneurs who have created viable lifestyle businesses, including teaching, vocation, and all that. And each one employing 5 to 10 people. You are giving jobs to 10, 20,000 people. Scale it up to 1 million. You're creating 10 million jobs.
Yeah.
And keep scaling up. You know, that's where the job. So, purely from an entrepreneurship perspective, and like what you were saying, you know, on the angel side, what you want to do, it's a good idea to get the vocational entrepreneurs to survive first and grow and build a lifestyle business.
And everyone has a role to play.
Everyone has a role to play.
Angels have a role to play, VCs have a
Exactly.
role to play, private equity has
Correct.
a role to play, public market investors,
Everybody's
government,
role.
regulators, everyone has a role to play. That's how an ecosystem is built. It's not built by one set of people. Now, right now in the limelight, as you said, like we celebrate funding rounds and things like that. The founder and the investors, or the founder and the VCs, are always in the limelight, but there are many other enabling factors which lead to this.
And I want to,
everyone has a role to play in the
share
building
a
of a great
story
company.
about 8 years back. We run a cohort. It's like a mini MBA for entrepreneurship program called Nurture. So we create this. So one entrepreneur came, and we were 3 of us. Think of after you return the cat, आपका interview हो रहा है ना, that kind of a situation. So he says, I want to sell sexy, sensuous lingerie online. This is 2015. Huh? So that is me, the tech entrepreneur, my good friend Ajay Bhagwat, founder of Renu Electronics, and Ravi Nikumb. All men. And this guy is a BTech computer science. Huh? Interview ho gaya. So I said, look, we're going to select him for our cohort, and I am the mentor. So Ajay asked me, तेरे को सेक्सी लॉन्जरी के बारे में क्या मालूम है? मैंने कहा वो तो वो सिखाएगा ना मेरे को. Fast forward the story, he came to me last year, and this guy always thinks out of the box. Once he asked me a question about 4 years back, can we lift a person vertically, transport him 200 kilometers, bring him down to solve the rural transportation problem? It's a guy, idea looks good, I have no idea whether it will work or not, but you need that much of space to test it out even if you have a gadget. He came last year and he has an idea that we are working on. So I said, तुम्हारा वो lingerie का क्या हुआ? The business has grown. What I told him very interesting was, do not think that only young people will buy. You may have somebody's 25th anniversary, the man wants to buy for his wife, stuff like that. So we found out that many of his customers were 40 plus. Now he's come back with a very different idea. And that business, I said, what happened to that business? Now you want to start something else? He said, now families got involved and that business is running well.
Flourishing.
So extended family. So there is, you know, so I'm sure they have created some jobs and everything, but we are now talking of a very different technology idea. So all I'm saying is, you know, any form of, it's like IPL or any of these organized sport, it has given life to a large number of cricketers.
To that
Otherwise,
extent,
it's only
Indian
top
startup
30.
ecosystem has evolved a lot.
A lot. There's so many things, right? I think you're seeing serial entrepreneurship, you're seeing companies listing earlier, you're seeing, people, like for example, one of our friends is now from McKinsey, was a founder, went to, start his own, was a VC after his founder journey. Now he's saying, I will start a company and I will raise only 10 crores lifetime, only from individual checks. Or I will run the business on that 10 crores and I'll return that 10 crores at IRR, usse zyada meko nahi chahiye. Like he's taken your
Bootstrap thing, right?
but to like very specific
It
number.
may be a better bootstrap version of better boot. 10 crore se.
10 crore चाहिए, 10 crore, उसे 1 रुपया ज़्यादा लोगो, I'll give back a 20% IRR.
And there were
So
entrepreneurs
no valuation,
in
no SSA, no
Pune,
nothing.
start of 19th, 20th century. 5 रुपया 10 रुपया लिया, कंपनी बनाई, उनको रिटर्न किए हुए. These are legendary. So I think many of these ideas, like Pooja's case, She started teaching. Now she's, you know, my niece, his cousin, started teaching. Now she's building it up. So can you get these entrepreneurs, and especially I think women entrepreneurs, you know, many times they balance between home and this thing. So they want a business which they can run while managing the family. And I think with all our expertise here, I think even if you help, say 100 of them, 200 of them over a 5-year period, you know, we'll do a lot to the society. Angel, obviously, I mean, you put such wisdom into angel investment. So now I am comfortable, you know, wherever I am, I know that
No,
5
I think
lakhs.
the takeaway is that you should now tell Arjun ki whatever you're investing in, I will invest with you.
Exactly.
able to then-
Or he becomes a. If Arjun says yes, do it. Otherwise, don't.
Just like the investor I talked about,
That
you
was
have
the most
no
comforting
idea.
takeaway for me as well.
You have no idea. That's why you have to play the probability.
Actually,
इतना सोच के भी पैसा नहीं बनता तो अच्छा है, अगर नहीं बना तो ठीक है.
नहीं, हम लोग
तो
क्या
मजा
करते
तो
हैं,
आया
you know,
थोड़ा सा.
Arjun, what we do is we are as crazy as you can get. We say no to an investment, but continue mentoring the entrepreneurs. They find it very difficult. You know, मना किया है, but we are spending time because हमने मना किया है, but we want that entrepreneur to succeed.
Yeah.
Because of the larger benefit it gives
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
So we have Ravi coming in the next, I think, some time. So we do it all the time. They take time to understand कि इन लोगों का interest क्या है. ये क्यों कर रहे हैं, मतलब कुछ तो होगा, मतलब आजकल, you know, without any personal gain, nobody does anything. So, but I think there is a merit to doing that, you know. Yeah.
I think we have spoken about like market in depth, right? Profit pool creation, tailwinds, figuring out disruptive ideas, patience of long-term visions. Then we spoke about capital allocation, raising capital, bootstrapping versus, you know, raising a lot of money, exit opportunities, depth of exits, etc. I think the one area which I wanted to get all of your perspectives on, which I have kind of thought increasingly over a period of time, and of course you have guided me as a board member and so has Ravi and so on, but is around talent and people. And just how do you, one is of course allocating capital, but then of course identifying good people and like you said, leveling them up, right, in your organization or in your ecosystem. In your case, for example, you would have touched in the tens of thousands, if not more, drivers. Right now you're touching people who are looking for jobs. But how do you guys think about talent? And you saw, like for example, the IT industry go from 300 people in TCS to now a place where fundamentally I feel like TCS still is a company that goes into colleges and recruits 25,000 people a year at 3 lakh rupees a year, right? It's now become that. So the talent has gone from one end to the other end at the bottom, but still run by very, very capable people. But what's your view on talent in terms of identifying, exciting, staying, keeping people close for many, many years, mentorship, etc. I'm just kind of leaving an open-ended, you know, kind of topic on the table, but would love to know. What do you think?
Let me take a shot at it. See, sometimes just like investment, and as Arjun said, 50% is luck. Many times you come across people in their life, their journey that you can hire. I would put premium on base talent and smartness and academics, because once you do that, your job becomes easier because you don't have to teach them much. That is one part. Many people say hire people who are smarter than you. Most people don't do it. But the ones who succeed actually do it.
Yeah.
For example, just to give you an idea, you know, in MOJO Networks, when we were about 15, 20 pre-investment, we had 3 PhDs. And we had most of the people from Kanpur, Bombay.
You're also IIT Kanpur, no?
Yeah.
So there's a huge IIT Kanpur. So Praveen was a professor at IIT
I
Kanpur.
met Praveen actually at a
Oh,
Distinguished
yeah.
Alumnus Award, and he mentioned about MOJO Networks, and
Yeah.
we spoke about
Exactly.
Oh, what a small world. What a
So we
small
did
world.
that. I think bringing those people is very important. We hired a couple of professors. One was, you know, your namesake Deepak. He was at IIT Kanpur. He came for a sabbatical, and he stayed with us for a sabbatical. I said, Deepak, how about extending sabbatical a little bit? So he extended. He said, Deepak, do you like what? हाँ, अच्छा लग रहा है यहाँ. मैं कहा IIT कभी भी जा सकते हो यार. Stay here. So, you know, Dr. Kaustubh, he was teaching in Sweden, came to India, we hired. So bit of a luck, but I think hiring especially for startups and small companies, you don't have the resource to teach and train. You need people who will figure it out, number one. Number two, assume that they will leave. Smart people will always find. So, the number of startups that came out of MOJO network, sometimes I was counting, there were 7, 8 people who left and started on their own, and we facilitated that, you know. And couple of them came back because they found it too hot to handle. So, they came back, and you know, now you have a person for life. So, I am a big believer in this. What I feel uncomfortable, and maybe I am old and maybe out of the place, is these 5, 6, 7 rounds of interview to hire someone who will be like this. Then you got a, you know, pony that will only one trick pony. It doesn't work for early stage startup disruptive idea. We need people who will figure it out. That's my take on this.
Yeah. If I can just build on what you said about smart people and hiring smart people, or people who are smarter than you, I've always found that the best ROI has come in hiring not just people who are smarter than you, but when you see something in them that they don't see themselves.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you see that they have the ability to go all the way or to scale, and it's very difficult to put a finger on it. It only comes with experience after you hire 100 or 1,000 people, and you can, you know, start connecting.
And Arjun, you start recognizing yourself when they tell you that this is something we need from you.
Yeah.
Oh, he
you
says that
you
I have got
certain
something.
signals, and definitely don't look for yourself in that person.
Correct.
So the most important thing is don't look for yourself in the person you're hiring, because you will then not hire a person who's complementary to you.
And they would do it differently.
Yes.
As long as it's in
And they would do it better.
So I think one of the challenges that I have seen in many companies, we have also done at some point, is sometimes we overhire, like in terms of the capabilities or pedigree, right? And during the funding boom and especially, right? So in 2015-16, I met across a couple of companies where even the admin was from IIT. So these were consumer tech companies.
Rivigo mein to nahi aaya.
So I think so because a lot of people over-index on pedigree, and like you want to hire similar to you, you want that kind, but you don't need that for. And this is a recipe for disaster. कि उसको आप उतना काम नहीं दे सकते हो, and to test his mental ability, aptitude, and all, and
or even ambition.
Yeah, right. So I think that is one. Second is, again, sometimes you over-index on pedigree, which again we should not. I think pedigree is overrated. Experience is also overrated, and this we've seen. What is underrated is high agency of getting things done, and because in a startup, 100 things will go wrong every day. In the initial stages, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Now, you will find two types of people. One who would say, you will keep pointing saying this is wrong, and there are people who would be okay working on with that ambiguity. Because again, when we had started, right, there's a lot of, especially when you're going offline, तो बहुत ज़्यादा offline में ना competition से hire कर लेते हैं कि उनको तो market पता होगा, and in 2-3 months we realized it is bullshit. Because ultimately trade respects your hard work.
Correct.
अगर आप for example मैं जाता था दुकान में, पहली बार गया दुकान में, वो मेरे को भगा दिया कि तुम कौन हो, मैं तुमको जानता नहीं हूँ. दूसरी बार गया सेम टाइम पे, बोला कि चल तू फिर से आया, बैठ के चाय पी लेते. चौथी बार गया तो बोला कि तू रोज आ रहा है, हफ्ते में हर हफ्ते एक बार आ रहा है मेरे से मिलने, इस बार 2 पंखा रख के जा. Do it for 4 times. Next time they would say कि I would go on a Sunday, saying कि like चलो आपका थोड़ा माल रखा होता है, माल बिकवा भी देता हूँ. The moment you do that, automatically trade develops respects. So today in a lot of our sales team, these are all freshers who joined, who had no idea of how sales and distribution works, how electrical industry works. And this we have seen it time and time again play out. And in fact, as a joke, I had posted once on LinkedIn saying that the number of IIT IIM graduates is inversely proportional to the chances of success of a consumer startup. Because you don't
Any startup.
because you don't need like it's not rocket science, right? You need hard work, you need problem solving, and you need high agency.
So you need smart people.
You need smart people. Yes. And you need hardworking people.
If I have to speak about a tech company, right? The chances that I will find a larger set of smart people would be from a good college. That is the thing.
Yes.
But that is not necessary. In fact, in MOJO networks, our smartest people were not from IIT.
Yes.
They were
That's
from
what
VJTI.
correlation,
or
I think,
But a
overrated.
lot of people have this, and a lot of established companies also.
Correct.
मतलब even 20 year down the line you would see कि वो कौन से IIM से था, इससे था, उसका वो ये college से था, pedigreed college से था. That is all nonsense.
Anyways, I think guys we have been talking for 3 hours and this has been fascinating. I think this every time like I always feel like an episode is always 10% complete and there is so much to discuss. But I think today for people who are watching, I think for me also this discussion was more about understanding how entrepreneurs think, how business builders think across market, capital and people. And I think there are multiple double clicks on these three, and then there are more around organization building in 1 to 10, 10 to 100. I wish we could have spent more time on how goodwill compounds, for example. That's a very, very interesting thing. But thank you so much for your time. You guys are, just tremendously inspiring to me individually. I learned so much. Arindam, we are meeting for the first time, but I think the amount I follow and just, thank you so much for being so generous. It's so generous.
Yes.
And each of his posts is a gem.
Outstanding. I love how you articulate and just kind of put things together. Deepak, I think just love to see how you have shared so generously about the highs and the learnings. People are very close guarded about these things, especially in with cameras and all that. But even the kind of reputation you carry amongst people who you have touched, you have worked with, is just incredible. So thank you so much for being like this with all the people who are watching. Arjun, of course, this is your 7th Barbershop presence, so I love that you're now almost a semi-permanent feature on the Barbershop. Aniket, I think I remember when you were your day 1 in McKinsey. Aniket, what was your all India rank in your final exam?
25.
Aniket,
rank 1, right? I remember CA rank 1.
No, yes.
but he would say, "Hi, I'm Aniket Nikumb, rank 29." I was like, where? I think you thought
Maybe
of.
that's how I remember. He may have hey,
I knew that Deepak will troll me. I just knew it.
But to see where where you started, as I also remember us discussing that you were someone who was academically so precocious, but you were told me कि CA में क्या होता है कि college, hostel वो वाला experience होता नहीं है. So then that's why I've come to McKinsey to kind of learn all this and to see where you are today, how mature you have become as a leader, kind of work that you do. And thanks for sharing so much.
Thank you.
You're a very wise human being for your age, so thanks. And Dad, of course, I take you for granted fully, but let me formally kind of say that.
Thank you
for
very
being
much,
a part of
Shantanu.
this.
It's always a pleasure. I mean, the consumer side which I don't know, and what's right now is is just an amazing. It's sort of refreshing and just building my reservoir more and more, refilling it.
But thank you so much, and everyone. Hope you have enjoyed. You can follow all these gentlemen on on multiple social media platforms where I kind of learn a lot from all of them. And thank you so much.